Chapter 757. After determining where to stay, Jiang Hai also went to the bathroom in the room. This tribe indeed had no electricity. Otherwise, how could the electric wire be pulled deep into the mountains? Most of the Native American tribes had no electricity. Without electricity, many things were inconvenient. For example, there was no water heater for bathing. Fortunately, Jiang Hai didn't care about this. After simply wiping himself with cold water, he returned to the room. The girl had already made the mattress on the floor. After Jiang Hai thanked her, he lay on the floor, and the girl went to wash up. While the girl was washing up, Jiang Hai also casually looked at the phone, but he just looked at it. There was no internet here. There was a mobile phone signal, but there was no internet signal, so he couldn't get on the internet. Moreover, Jiang Hai's phone was running out of battery. His battery was only charged in the car for a short time, and now there was more than 40% left. Everyone knew that the electricity bill for a smartphone was not a small amount. If he went out to play during normal times, the battery would run out every day. No matter what kind of phone it would run out of battery after a day. If it was a game or something, it would run out of battery after a few hours. With more than 40%, Jiang Hai could still use it for a night if he used it sparingly. If he played the phone for a while, it would completely run out of battery. So after just looking at it, Jiang Hai turned off all the back-end functions and put the phone aside. But if he didn't play the phone, to be honest, Jiang Hai couldn't fall asleep. As a very normal young man, he used to sleep early at night, but now, tsk. Although it was already quite late outside, it was only 9 o'clock. He couldn't play with the phone yet. It was really a bit troublesome to sleep. But fortunately, at this time, the girl also came out of the bathroom, then walked gently to the bed and climbed up. "You haven't slept yet." Looking at Jiang Hai still lying there, although he didn't speak, she felt that Jiang Hai wasn't asleep. To be honest, if Jiang Hai didn't sleep, she didn't dare to sleep either, even though to a certain extent, she belonged to him tonight. "Yeah, it's too early. I can't sleep." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai nodded and whispered. "That's how it is in the mountains. There's nothing we can do about it." Seeing that Jiang Hai couldn't sleep, the girl smiled and said, "Speaking of which, we haven't gotten to know each other yet. After all, it's fate to sleep in the same room. My name is Jiang Hai. I'm from Wuxia. I'm now living in Winthrop." Hearing the girl's words, Jiang Hai also sat up and smiled at her. "My name is Tarak, I'm from the Tucker clan. If I dare to say that I'm an American, our patriarch will kill me." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman couldn't help but laugh and said, "Tarak, it seems to be a boy's name." Carefully chewing on Tarak's name, Jiang Hai asked strangely. He just heard that the girl's brother was called Patton. "Why is she called Tarak?" "Our tribe's surname is the tribe's surname. We don't introduce ourselves. Our names are quite free." As if he saw Jiang Hai's doubts, Tarak smiled and talked about the habits of these people. The names of the Native Americans were quite liberal. You could call them whatever you wanted. These people didn't have family names. Just like what Tarlac said, their tribe was their family name. For many Native Americans, their family name was their family name. The names given to them when they were young were not meant to be used for their entire lives. They were basically temporary. When they were 16 or 17 years old, these people would change their names. This was also a sign that they had grown up. And the names of these people are also very strange. Some are the names of animals, some are homophones, and some are imaginary things. For example, the famous leader of the Sioux tribe in the United States, Crazy Horse. It's hard to understand why he's called that, and then there's another head called Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull. It's really hard to understand the way these people came up with names. What Jiang Hai said now are all homophones. As for the specific meaning, Jiang Hai is not too good to ask. "Who did you learn English from?" It's quite standard. After talking about some Native American customs, Jiang Hai asked the girl, I learned from the patriarch. Our patriarch used to join the U.S. military and learned English in the army. Later, he retired and returned to the tribe and became the patriarch. He led the tribe to maintain our unique culture and spread it outside. Over the years, many people learned English from him, but some of them left the tribe after learning it. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, the girl sat on the bed and said with some helplessness, "No matter who it is, faith is not enough to fill their stomach." With a tool to communicate with the outside world, some Native Americans are willing to abandon their hatred and come out. Some of these people escaped, and some went to trade things or see a doctor. They discovered the beauty of the outside world and did not go back. This was a good thing for the American government, and it was also a good thing for them. However, to their original tribes, these people were traitors. Everyone had a different perspective, so naturally, the way they looked at things was also different. Just like Tarak now, in her words, she is looking forward to the outside world, but at the same time, she hates those traitors. The pursuit of a better life will not change, so Jiang Hai can't say anything. "Oh right, I haven't been to places that are too far away. Can you tell me about the outside world?" Thinking of this, the girl suddenly changed her mood and said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also told her. In fact, he mainly talked about the things in Jiang Hai's manner, the electrical appliances, the modern life, the delicious food, and so on. Originally, the girl was looking forward to the outside world. Now listening to Jiang Hai's words, she was quite fascinated. Just like this, one asked, the other answered. Unknowingly, it was getting late. Jiang Hai is not sleepy before 11 o'clock, but Tarak is not sleepy. She usually goes to bed at 8 or 9 o'clock. So around 10 o'clock, she was already very sleepy, but her curiosity about the outside world made her a little reluctant to sleep. "Okay, go to sleep. If you have time, you can go to Winthrop to play with me. I will take you around the modern city, and you will know what the outside world is like." Feeling the girl's sleepiness, but she doesn't want to sleep, Jiang Hai also said with a smile. He is not joking. If the girl really has a chance to go to his place in the future, he will definitely treat her well. Really? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the girl's eyes can't help but light up, and she asked with excitement. Of course. Seeing the girl's excited look, Jiang Hai naturally won't spoil her mood, and said with a smile. Then it's a deal. If I have time, I will definitely go to you, Jiang Hai. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, the girl said with a smile. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled, such a pure wish, he will not break his promise. After deciding that the girl could look for him in the future, the two of them entered their respective dreamlands. Jiang Hai didn't know when he fell asleep, but in any case, he fell asleep in a daze. But in the middle of the night, he suddenly heard the sound of footsteps. This made Jiang Hai instantly wake up. Sitting on the ground, his brows couldn't help but slightly wrinkle. This tribe was a primitive tribe. In the entire tribe, the only thing that could be considered a household appliance was the flashlight. Every night, this tribe will arrange for people to keep watch, so Jiang Hai is used to the sound of people walking outside, but at this time, the sound of these people walking is a little far, and it is very messy, which makes Jiang Hai a little puzzled. What's the situation? Touching his head, Jiang Hai was a little overwhelmed. After putting on his shoes, Jiang Hai walked to the door, opened the door and looked outside, but just as he opened the door, he was discovered by the people patrolling the tribe, and these people quickly ran over. Although they didn't raise their guns, their eyes were not quite right, looking at Jiang Hai with some vigilance. Sorry, I came out to take a look. After talking to these people, Jiang Hai didn't care if they understood or not. He frowned and looked into the forest in the distance, but there was nothing in sight, but the footsteps were getting closer and closer. This guest, please go back. We are not allowed to walk around at night. Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't go back and was still looking around, the leader here couldn't help but say to Jiang Hai, but Jiang Hai's face became more and more puzzled. What's wrong? Hearing the sound outside the door, the girl who had fallen asleep at this time also woke up. She rubbed her confused eyes, walked to Jiang Hai's side, and asked him. Except for her tribal chief, other people didn't understand her language. There seems to be people in the forest over there, and the number seems to be quite a lot. Listening to the girl's words, Jiang Hai pointed to the forest in the distance and said to the girl, but after the girl heard Jiang Hai's words, she was also very confused. She glanced at the situation outside, but she couldn't see anything. Then she blinked and looked at Jiang Hai, as if to ask if Jiang Hai heard wrongly. Jiang Hai looked at her eyes and naturally knew what her eyes meant, then he shook his head very clearly. I really heard some footsteps. You can ask them to send someone to take a look. Anyway, it's not far away. Seeing that the girl didn't believe him, Jiang Hai still said very clearly. Logically speaking, his ears shouldn't be so good. After all, he was now only 8 times the body limit of a human, and he didn't turn into a rabbit. 8 times the body of a human really didn't have much effect. But he just felt that there were a lot of people in the forest, and it was very likely that they didn't come with good intentions. He said that there seems to be people in the forest over there. You can send someone to take a look. It's better to believe it than not. Hearing Jiang Hai being so sure, the girl still didn't quite understand, but just like what Jiang Hai said, it's not far, just go and take a look. Hearing the girl's words, although this person still felt that Jiang Hai was talking nonsense, he still sent someone to take a look. Although this person was a little reluctant in his heart, he still trotted over, ready to come back if nothing happened. But the moment this person was about to run out of the tribe, Jiang Hai suddenly heard a voice in his mind. Danger! Get down! He shouted first and then immediately pulled the girl to lie down. Although the people opposite him were puzzled, the leader also led everyone to hide. The moment they hid, tongues of fire suddenly shot out from the forest. The person who ran out of the village was immediately shot into a sieve by the bullets outside. Enemy attack. With the sound of gunshots, the night watchers who were still alive immediately screamed at the top of their lungs. Hearing these people's words, the men in the tribe woke up immediately. This was also their instinct as hunters. They immediately grabbed their weapons and were about to run out. But before most people could get out of the house, the tongue of fire swept towards the tribe again. In an instant, more than a dozen people who had just come out of the house were swept to the ground before they could react. At the same time, some people quietly moved towards the tribe under the cover of the fire. Looking at these people's movements, Jiang Hai knew that these people were professionals. If these people were to enter the tribe, then no one in the tribe would be able to survive. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai narrowed his eyes and quickly pressed the girl into the house, while he himself moved towards the direction of his car. Although there were still some doubts about Jiang Hai, now no one would care about Jiang Hai's problem. All the people in the tribe were barely fighting back, but with their homemade firearms, they had to fire 4 or 5 shots to kill a wild boar. There was no problem in hunting, but against the enemy, the gap was too big. Rows of bullets were fired, but they basically didn't hit anything. The opposite side's firepower was still strong, and those people who were moving forward were about to move near the tribe in the blink of an eye. The opposite side didn't have any hope of getting hurt, but this tribe, in Jiang Hai's view, had lost at least 1/5 of its combat power. Fortunately, the opposite side didn't pay too much attention to Jiang Hai, so Jiang Hai secretly moved to his car. After opening the door, Jiang Hai jumped into the back seat. Here, he breathed a sigh of relief, and then took out his weapons from the back seat. He had a Desert Eagle and a semi-automatic August. With guns in his hands, he was no longer panicking. Chapter 758. Boss, can you confirm where the thing you want is? You know, these are Native Americans. If we wait too long, the American police won't let us go. When the sound of gunfire echoed in the sky, at this time in the forest, a fully armed white man chewing gum walked to the side of a man who was playing with a dog and said with a headache. To be honest, although these mercenaries only cared about money and not people, everyone knew how high the status of the Native Americans was in the United States. This was mainly related to the early days of the United States. It could be said that the reason why the Native Americans were almost annihilated was because the Americans had contributed the most. Even the British, who had been the most ruthless at the beginning, had later given the Alabama mountains to the Native Americans. But when the Americans fought with the British, their strength, TSK, was precisely because of this historical problem. So in the United States, many scholars and the like said all day long that the American government was a group of ungrateful people. When they first came, it was the Native Americans who helped them take root here. This was also the reason why Thanksgiving Day was widely believed to exist internationally. But in fact, Thanksgiving Day was a holiday formed by the American military to celebrate their victory in the massacre of the Native Americans. This was extremely ironic in the eyes of the Americans who always promoted racial equality. So the Native Americans had a special status in the United States. These mercenaries dared to risk universal condemnation and slaughter the Native American tribes. Whether this matter was successful or not, it would be difficult for them to survive in the United States. In the future, they could only live a life of escape. Don't worry, I came to this village today. There is no electricity in this village, so there is no phone. We have plenty of time. Hearing the words of the mercenary leader, a white man on the other side smiled and scratched the chin of the puppy in his arms and said with a smile, "I hope so." Hearing the white man's words, the man said with some helplessness and then signaled his men to speed up the attack. At this time, Jiang Hai, who was in the car, had already dialed the police phone. After the phone rang twice, it was picked up. But when the police heard the gunshots, the police on the other side of the phone was stunned for a moment. Listening to the sound, it didn't seem like an ordinary gunfight. "Hello, what happened over there?" The policeman holding the microphone asked Jiang Hai on the other side of the phone. "This is an Indian tribe in the Alabama mountains. It seems to be called Toga. Now for some reason, they were attacked by a group of armed forces and many people died. Please send people over quickly." Listening to the police, Jiang Hai also said to the other side of the phone, "Toga, check the exact location." Hearing Jiang Hai's urgent voice, the police officer on the other side immediately opened the map to check. After confirming the location, he immediately reported the matter to the state police. This was a big deal. "Okay, we'll send a helicopter over right away. You guys hang in there." After confirming the location, the policeman on the other side also said to Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai heard his words and did not say much. He knew that this was not the city, and the police could arrive within 5 minutes. This was deep in the mountains and forests. It would take more than half an hour for the helicopter to arrive, but Jiang Hai was still quite confident that they could hold on for half an hour. After hanging up the phone, Jiang Hai climbed back into the driver's seat. Then, he started the engine, turned the steering wheel, and went straight to the entrance of the tribe. At this time, the mercenaries on the other side were about to kill their way to the entrance of the tribe. The sudden appearance of the shield gave these people a shock. Jiang Hai instantly turned on the high beam, blinding these people and making them see clearly at the same time. Aim and shoot. When some people's vision was blocked, Jiang Hai also opened the door and jumped out of the car. He shouted at the Native Americans who were still shooting at the back. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the old tribal chief who had just come out at this time immediately translated for Jiang Hai. After having a backbone, these Native Americans were finally not as panicked. Fortunately, they had been hunting in the forest since they were young. In addition, they advocated bravery. Although they had not killed anyone before, most of them had good mental fortitude. They found some hidden and protected places and used the indigenous weapons in their hands to shoot at the people in front of them. Although compared to the firepower, it was still more than a level lower, at least it was still a gun. If they were hit, they would be injured or even killed. F***ck, where did the car come from? At this time, not only were the Native Americans calmed down, but the people in the forest were also confused. The mercenary leader looked at the car and couldn't help but be stunned. He knew very well that it was a bulletproof car. If there was a car, it meant that there was an owner of the car. As a modern person, it was impossible for the owner to not have a mobile phone. If he had a mobile phone and called the police would come in less than half an hour. He knew this better than anyone else. Didn't you say that there would be no problem? Thinking that he might have to live a life of exile in the future, the mercenary leader couldn't help but shout. He grabbed the collar of the white man and shouted. The white man didn't expect that Jiang Hai would be here. For a moment, he was also a little confused. When the mercenary leader pulled him up, he also reacted. What's the use of talking nonsense now? We've already fought. Immediately take down this place and then kill all of them. Otherwise, we're all done for. This person was also a ruthless person. He directly broke free from the mercenary leader's hand and shouted loudly. This is not over. The mercenary leader glared fiercely at this person and cursed in his heart. He had no choice but to charge now. Following his hand gesture, the subordinates who were originally moving in an orderly manner rushed up immediately. Now, they were going to risk their lives. Although they were fast, Jiang Hai was faster. After making the Native Americans quiet down, he also found a position and set up the August. Then, he used the scope to look at the people in front of him. Although Jiang Hai's August was semi-automatic, which meant that he had to pull out the trigger bit by bit, his magazine had already changed from 5 rounds to a normal 30-round magazine. Pulling out the trigger bit by bit was enough to cause a lot of trouble for these guys. Pa pa pa. 3 consecutive sounds were heard. The 3 mercenaries who rushed the fastest trembled and fell down weakly. Their companions went forward to take a look and found that the 3 of them were almost the same. They were shot in the throat and died. These mercenaries were naturally armed to the teeth. They were fully equipped with bulletproof vests and helmets. There were only 2 places that weren't bulletproof. One was their throat, which was already covered with oil paint, and the other was their eyes. Anyone who had shot a gun before knew that it wasn't particularly difficult to hit the head. However, to hit the throat, that was really not easy. This was also because Jiang Hai had 8 times the vision of an ordinary person. In addition to the scope and his strength, the recoil of the gun was 0. Semi-automatic weapon, protect your eyes and throat. He still has 2 bullets. Move over. Although they had lost 3 teammates, once they heard the gunshots, the people who rushed forward already knew about Jiang Hai's situation. After a loud command, these people all shrunk their necks into their clothes and then jogged forward. Looking at these people's movements, Jiang Hai tried to fire 2 more shots. Sure enough, these 2 shots only used the impact to knock down 2 people. However, these 2 people immediately got up and continued to move forward. After these 2 shots, Jiang Hai purposely waited for a while. Sure enough, these people thought that Jiang Hai only had a 5-round magazine. In an instant, several people sped up their pace. As soon as their speed increased, their flaws were naturally exposed. Looking at these people in front of him, Jiang Hai chuckled. Pa 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 pa. This time, there were 4 consecutive shots and 4 more people fell to the ground, sleeping forever on this piece of land. When the leader heard the first shot, he knew that he was fooled and immediately fell to the ground. Bastard. He has a 30-round magazine. Let's be careful. Feeling Jiang Hai's gunshots, the leader secretly cursed. Then these people got up again and continued to run towards this side in the same posture as before. Looking at their posture, Jiang Hai couldn't help but curse. Although the August is a rifle, this gun is a civilian version and its power is clearly castrated. At least this gun can't penetrate the reinforced concrete wall, nor can it penetrate their helmets and bulletproof vests. Now that these professional guys have begun to defend themselves, he is in trouble. For the first time, Jiang Hai really didn't care much about guns before. He just wanted to play with them and protect himself. For the first time, he was interested in guns. If he had a sniper rifle at this time, he would feel happy just thinking about it, but unfortunately, he doesn't. Jiang Hai looked at Turok's brother, Patton, who was shooting a gun in the distance. Jiang Hai whistled at him and threw the rifle to him. After Patton took the rifle, he was stunned. He had never used such a good gun before. Jiang Hai looked at Patton and whistled at him. Aim and shoot, there is a scope on it. Looking at his puzzled eyes, Jiang Hai smiled at him. The August is useless, so he will use it as a cover. As for Jiang Hai, he still has the Desert Eagle. This is the most important thing. The 50 caliber Desert Eagle, within a range of 50 meters, although it is not as good as a sniper rifle, it is at least better than the civilian version of the August. Glancing at the approaching people, they were about 30 meters away. Without saying a word, Jiang Hai jumped up and fired 7 shots in a row in the air, emptying 7 bullets in the pistol. These 7 bullets instantly killed 4 people, and 2 more were injured. Because Jiang Hai was in the air, his shooting was not particularly accurate, so one of the 2 was injured in the hand and the other was injured in the leg. There was also a bullet that flew out and missed, but this made the leader in the front anxious. Attack! Seeing that almost half of the vanguard force he brought was lost, the leader's face was livid. Without saying a word, he directly led the crowd to the main gate of the tribe. At this time, Jiang Hai also changed the bullets. Glancing at the people rushing over, Jiang Hai was ready to attack again, but this time, he just shot a bullet, and these guys who had been watching him for a long time sent a magazine of bullets over. The bullets hit his shield, but the shield was indeed strong. Although it may not be as good as the antlers, none of these bullets hit it. Although the glass has long been broken into pieces, it did not crack. Jiang Hai really bought this shield. This thing saved his life twice. However, it was not enough to just rely on the shield to save his life. Jiang Hai's DNA carried the element of attack. In an instant, the other side of the door opened, but Jiang Hai stuck his head out from the side where he came in. Pa! 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 The bullets hit the knees of 2 people, and in an instant, another 2 people lost their ability to move. At a distance of about 10 meters, the 50 caliber Desert Eagle hit the knees of 2 people. Even if they wore bulletproof vests, it was useless. The knees exploded, and the 2 people covered their legs and screamed as they fell down. Retreat. However, even if he killed another 2 people, these people were already at the entrance of the tribe. Jiang Hai and the others had to leave. He made a gesture to the Native Americans beside him, and these Native Americans understood. For a tribe like this, what they worshipped the most was the strong. Originally, during the banquet, Jiang Hai had fought 8 battles in a row, so they had a good impression of Jiang Hai. Now, after watching them fight for a long time, not a single person was killed. However, when Jiang Hai attacked, he instantly killed more than a dozen people. This made them worship Jiang Hai even more. When Jiang Hai said to retreat, these people didn't disobey. They immediately took their things and ran back. If the house was gone, it could be rebuilt in the future. However, if people died, there would be nothing left. Seeing that everyone was retreating, Jiang Hai stepped on the accelerator and rushed towards the people in front of him. After all, these people were made of flesh and blood. It was impossible for them to withstand Jiang Hai's collision. Under the leadership of the leader, they immediately dodged to the sides. However, the moment they dodged, Jiang Hai opened the car door and fired the remaining 5 bullets. Although the recoil of this gun was very strong, it was still 0 for Jiang Hai. This time, there was no obstruction. After killing 5 people with 5 bullets, Jiang Hai turned the steering wheel and rushed into the village again. In an instant, he passed the square where today's competition was held. Behind the square, there was a row of stone houses. These houses were where the tribal chiefs and elders lived. However, at this time, it was crowded with people. The old and weak were at the back, and the young and strong who had retreated were using these houses as their last defense. Jiang Hai stopped the car in front of the houses. He took his remaining magazines and bullets and ran to the row of houses. When they saw Jiang Hai running back, the eyes of all the people in the tribe lit up. Chapter 759. Sorry to trouble you. I didn't expect you to be involved in such trouble. Looking at Jiang Hai, the patriarch said helplessly. If it wasn't for Jiang Hai, perhaps at this time, these people would have already killed their way into the tribe. With the firepower of these people, it was likely that his tribe would be wiped out today. At the thought of this, he couldn't help but feel sorrow in his heart. He sighed helplessly. It's okay if it's troublesome. After all, I can't just stand by and do nothing. After all, if these people come in, I will die too. Jiang Hai waved his hand, indicating that the patriarch didn't need to say this. He looked at the mercenaries in the distance who were moving forward quickly after he left. What do we do now? Do we run? Seeing Jiang Hai looking outside, many people in the tribe could see the situation in the distance clearly. Turok walked to Jiang Hai's side and whispered to Jiang Hai. We can't escape, and we don't have to. I just called the police station. They said that they will arrive in half an hour. Now, almost 20 minutes have passed. As long as we hold on for another 10 minutes, we will be almost there. Looking at his watch, Jiang Hai calculated the time and said to the people around him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, although the people in this tribe weren't very friendly to the police outside, they were still willing to help. However, someone came to save them. This was an out-and-out good thing. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, they decided to wait for another 10 minutes before saying anything else. Okay, after this matter, you will be the great benefactor of our tribe. We will definitely repay you. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the patriarch took a deep breath and looked at Jiang Hai. Hearing the patriarch's words, Jiang Hai smiled. This tribe is so poor, what else can they repay me? Thinking about it, Jiang Hai felt a little funny. In his opinion, the so-called repayment was probably some flower ginseng, antlers, and the like. However, he didn't say it out loud. After all, in this tribe, these things are the most valuable. Others took the most valuable things and made friends with you. Even if you don't like them, as long as you know how to be a person, you won't say it out loud at this time. So Jiang Hai just thanked the other party and then arranged for these people to be stationed. And how can the old patriarch not see through Jiang Hai's thoughts? He saw that Jiang Hai didn't care about the things he wanted to repay his kindness. However, this also showed that Jiang Hai didn't know what he wanted to repay his kindness. At the same time, he also breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, before this, he didn't particularly believe Jiang Hai. What if Jiang Hai and the people outside were acting, just to deceive him of that thing? Therefore, sometimes, there was nothing wrong with being a little more careful. Jiang Hai didn't know that the old patriarch had set a trap for him. After he arranged everyone, he told them to look carefully before shooting. He also told them the weakness of these people. The only weakness of these people is their neck. If they can't hit the neck, with the guns in their hands, no matter how close they are, they won't have any lethality. These guns can't even penetrate the opponent's leather shoes. After all, the shoes are inlaid with a layer of steel. Jiang Hai sat in his position and lined up the bullets one by one. Looking at Jiang Hai's movements, Turok also came over and squatted beside Jiang Hai, looking at Jiang Hai. Is there anything I can help with? Looking at Jiang Hai, Turok asked curiously. You? Yes, after I finish the bullets, help me reload the magazine. Just reload it like this, 7 bullets per magazine. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was stunned for a moment. Originally, he wanted to refuse, but after thinking about it, it seems that there is still something he can help with. So he taught Turok how to reload the bullets. Turok is only 18 years old this year, but she has already played with guns. And most importantly, her strength isn't small. Even if the spring is strong, she can still reload it. This way, Jiang Hai won't have to worry about it. After he finished talking with Turok, those people have already entered the village. There are more than 40 people in the front, well, there are more than 20 people left. These people were basically killed by Jiang Hai. They immediately surrounded the village, and then more than 20 people slowly walked into the village. Among them, more than a dozen people are mercenaries, and 5 or 6 people are wearing casual clothes. They look like a group of backpackers. It's them. Seeing these people walking into the village, Turok can't help but gritted her teeth and snorted. Who are they? Hearing Turok's words, Jiang Hai asked with some doubts. He really doesn't know who these people are. They are the people who caused trouble at our ceremony today. They stole a dog and left the tribe. We were chasing them when we met you." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Tarak turned her head and said to him, "They are those dog fans?" Hearing Tarak's words, Jiang Hai was a bit confused. When did dog fans become so arrogant? In order to save the dog, they even dared to send mercenaries to slaughter the village? Jiang Hai could only say that they were worthy of being called America's dog fans. Their game was more sophisticated than Huaxia's. At most, Huaxia could force people to apologize, but the United States could really exterminate their entire family. But whether these guys came to avenge the dog or not, Jiang Hai's life is still in his own hands. Looking at these people coming over, Jiang Hai opened his gun with a snap, and the moment he fired, Patton on the other side also pulled the trigger. Jiang Hai has to admit that Patton is a very good hunter, and he has already shot a lot of times, and he has already found the feeling. This time, Jiang Hai's bullet went directly into a person's mouth, and Patton's bullet went directly through the scope of a person's gun, directly penetrating the person's eye. With a bang, the person was dead. Seeing that they lost 2 teammates in an instant, the vanguard team immediately started to fight back, but the bullets hit the stone and were not bounced off, and there was no way to leave too much space. Now the rifle bullets are 5.56 millimeters, in order to reduce the wound and cause secondary damage, so the penetration is far worse than 7.62 millimeters. These stone houses, 7.62 millimeters bullets can't even penetrate, let alone these small caliber bullets. For a while, the sound of gunfire could be heard, but it did not cause any damage to these Native Americans. Instead, it was the kind of shotgun used by the Native Americans, the kind that uses deer bullets. Once they are shot, it will scatter. Although the penetration is not good, the impact is not ordinary. For a while, these people were stunned, and they quickly retreated. After retreating 50 meters away, the guns of the Native Americans were no longer effective. Jiang Hai's pistol was also out of action. Except for the August, everyone else was finished. But at this distance, it was almost impossible for the August to shoot through the scope again. Therefore, Patton also put down his gun and looked outside with a fierce face. Patton was also looking outside with a fierce expression on his face. For a while, whether it is inside or outside the room, it was quiet. The originally lively battlefield cooled down at this time. But everyone knew that this was just the calm before the storm, and soon, there will be a side that will destroy the balance. These guys have a strong will to resist, and I don't know why, but they have advanced weapons. One of them is very strong, and many of our people have fallen in his hands. If we attack, the losses may be very heavy. At this time, the people who came in later quickly searched the other rooms in the village. The group of people also arrived at the front line. When the commander of the front line saw these people, he immediately ran to a man and saluted him. Then he whispered something to the commander. "Sir, you're right. Mother die, these damn natives." Looking at the stone ice house in front of him, the mercenary leader scolded with a serious face. Then he looked at the people wearing mountaineering gear around him. Now it's time for this guy to make a decision. The people inside, listen up, we are old friends. We came here only for that thing. If you take that thing out, I won't hurt you. If you don't take it out, the people around me won't be so good-tempered. Seeing the mercenary leader's words, the man who had been leading the dog here came over and shouted at the people in the stone house with a gloomy face. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai, who was in the stone house at this time, couldn't help but frown. Didn't these people come here to avenge the dog? Well, it seemed that this world didn't have people who would slaughter a village for a dog. After all, this was a civilized society. Interesting. Muttering in a low voice, Jiang Hai picked up a dagger and made a small hole in the wall. Then he turned on the phone. He was going to record who these people were. He knew that it was impossible to make all of them stay today. Before the police came, they would probably escape. But knowing your enemy is the only way to win 100 battles. Jiang Hai at least had to know who he was fighting tonight. Then he turned on the video and Jiang Hai recorded the situation outside. I don't know what you are talking about. We saw that you were travelers and specially invited you to participate in our worship activities. But not only were you not grateful, you even attacked us. Now you want to slaughter the village. You are really the descendants of the Americans. You have the same personality. Hearing the words of the man outside, the chief couldn't help but shout. Hearing the chief's words, Jiang Hai felt that the people outside couldn't help but freeze. Although the mercenaries didn't care about right or wrong and only cared about money, they were also human. They also felt that these people were a little too shameless. Hey, you can say whatever you want. If you don't hand that thing over today, don't think that a single person in your village will walk out alive. Hearing the chief's words, the man didn't care. Then he smiled lightly and threatened in a low voice. I don't understand what you are talking about. After hearing his words, the chief said with certainty. Hearing the chief's final answer, the people here couldn't help but change their expressions. The mercenary leader also looked at the man beside him. Whether or not to fight, and how to fight, he had the final say. You are refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Do you think that a house can protect you? Are your brains fried? This is the 21st century, the world of firearms. Deal with them. Since the chief was unwilling to trade, the people here had nothing to say. As his voice fell, he also nodded to the mercenary leader here. After the mercenary leader got the news, he immediately waved his hand. Then he saw a man 50 meters away quickly stand up, then he took out a cylindrical object from a box he carried with him. At the same time, an assistant was preparing something. Damn it, they have a rocket launcher, give me the August. When Jiang Hai saw this thing, he immediately knew what it was and immediately said to Patton. When Patton heard Jiang Hai's words, although he liked this gun very much, he didn't hesitate. After all, this gun originally belonged to Jiang Hai. After Jiang Hai picked up the gun, he immediately aimed at the rocket launcher in the distance. While he was aiming, the rocket launcher over there was already loaded. The other party was also aiming and preparing to pull the trigger. Bang! Fire! In the blink of an eye, with the mercenary leader's roar, he pulled the trigger. But at the same time, Jiang Hai's gun also fired. The bullet was like a guided missile, directly hitting the head of the launched rocket. No matter what, the fuse of a rocket was at the warhead, but it was quite hard. In other words, a rocket was the same as a normal bullet. It was a trigger explosion. Take this warhead for example. If it was fired, it would directly hit the stone house. The warhead was compressed, and the fuse's conductive tube entered the explosive, causing a violent explosion. Now, Jiang Hai was helping it in advance. It directly hit the warhead, and the conductive tube also entered the explosive. Bang! With a loud sound, the flames rose in an instant, directly swallowing the main shooter, the assistant shooter, and the rocket launcher. At the same time, those who were close to the explosion also suffered. Some of them were lucky, but they only felt that their heads were full of stars. Some of them were unlucky, and they were killed by the aftershock of the explosion, including the mercenary leader. But he was lucky, he saw stars, but the left side of his face was severely burned. But at this time, he didn't have the time and leisure to care about this. Because he was already in a daze, and after this incident, the other mercenaries were also in a daze. Now that there was no commander, they didn't know what to do. At this moment, the sound of a propeller spinning quickly came from a distance, and these people's faces changed instantly. They didn't have a helicopter, which proved that this should be the other party's reinforcements, or it could be said that it was the American police. Chapter 760. Hurry up, retreat. Hearing the sound of the helicopter, the second in command of this squad, who was the one who led the vanguard to attack the gate, instantly changed his expression as he roared loudly at once. Hearing his words, the people who were still alive and conscious immediately got up. Each of them carried two or one of the unconscious people or the corpses of their own people and rushed into the forest. These corpses also contained a lot of information, such as the identity of these people, which mercenary group they belonged to, and so on. Everyone knew the attitude of the American government towards the Native Americans. If they did this without any news, they would not know that this small village had been massacred until it was discovered by outsiders. After a long time, people might not be able to connect them. However, now that they were caught red-handed, they had to run even if they did not want to. Why are you running? Come back, I haven't gotten what I want yet. Seeing that these people were about to run, the people in mountaineering gear became anxious. The leader of the group, who was leading the dog, shouted loudly. Unfortunately, these mercenaries were obviously veterans on the battlefield. Following orders and prohibitions was the most basic thing. They only listened to their superior. When the mercenary leader was still alive, they listened to him. Now that the mercenary leader was confused, they naturally had to listen to the second-in-command. As for the employer, who was it? Did it have anything to do with them? You bastards, don't you want the money? Seeing that these people completely ignored him and kept retreating, this person was also angry and shouted loudly. Hearing this person's words, the retreating second-in-command could not help but stop. Although I don't know how much money you negotiated with our boss, this failure is mainly because your information was wrong. Moreover, we have lost so many brothers. If you dare not give us the money, even a cent less, you can forget about living in peace for the rest of your life. After glaring fiercely at this person, the second-in-command immediately ran out. These bastards. Seeing that the second-in-command left, this person could not help but curse secretly. Then, he turned his head and glared fiercely at those who were still in the stone house. Then, he wanted to leave as well. You can't let that dog leave. Seeing that they were about to leave, the patriarch also shouted loudly. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai didn't care so much. He stood up directly and aimed with the August. With a bang, the dog that was led by the man was shot through the head and died on the spot. Seeing the dog die, the man was also furious. He could only throw away the rope that tied the dog and then quickly ran into the forest. Looking at their retreating appearance, Jiang Hai also rolled out of the stone house. However, as soon as he flashed out, he was greeted by a few bullets. An army is not professional, not elite. From the way they retreated, it can be seen that this mercenary regiment is obviously an extremely elite existence. Although they retreated quickly, they didn't panic at all. The most important thing is that these people deliberately left some people behind to cover the rear. Looking at the firepower that covered the rear, Jiang Hai couldn't help but curse. Although the AUG's range is long enough, it has no effect on them. He can only use the Desert Eagle to attack. But the problem is that it's difficult for the Desert Eagle to catch up with them. The Desert Eagle's attack range is so short. However, was he supposed to just watch these people leave like that? This is absolutely impossible. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai threw the August to the ground again, then he exerted force with his legs and jumped out of his hiding place in an instant. At this time, the flames also suppressed him again, but Jiang Hai used all his abilities at this time. 8 times the limit of an ordinary person's speed and agility allowed him to reach a low wall in one step. Then, with a flip, he went directly to the roof of a house. Seeing Jiang Hai's movie-like movements, the hidden enemies also panicked a little. Retreat. The roof was a blind spot, so they couldn't find him. But at this time, the sound of the helicopter was getting closer and closer. After thinking for a while, the person in charge of the retreat was ready to retreat first. At this time, the people who left first had already reached the village entrance. They could also enter the forest before the helicopter arrived. In the midsummer of the Alabakia Mountains, the vegetation in the mountain forest was extremely rich. As long as they entered the forest, the police wouldn't be able to catch them. And most importantly, the Alabakia Mountains were quite long. It was not only in the United States, but also in Canada. As long as they passed the first wave of pursuit, the following things would not be a problem for them. With this person's order, the 4 people who were originally hiding jumped up immediately and moved quickly toward the village entrance. But at this time, Jiang Hai suddenly rushed out of the house next to them. Just now, Jiang Hai used his strong physical fitness to jump down from the back of the house after getting on the roof. He went around half a circle and went to the back of the house. After breaking the wooden planks of the house, he rushed into the house and killed the enemy here. The enemy's reaction was not slow, but they didn't expect that Jiang Hai's speed was even faster. At the moment of rushing out, Jiang Hai did not say anything and directly fired 2 shots. The 2 people closest to him, one was shot in the head, and the other one was shot in the knee and fell to the ground. Just as he was about to continue shooting, the 2 people on the other side had already reacted and shot at him with their guns. But at this time, Jiang Hai was in an open place. He had no choice but to dodge. After a glance, he finally decided to use the body of the nearest mercenary as a shield. In a flash, Jiang Hai squatted down and picked up the man's body. In an instant, the man's eyes were almost full of holes, and Jiang Hai was waiting for an opportunity to counterattack. "It's too late, let's go." But at this time, the mercenary who was shot in the leg pushed away his companions and shouted at them. At the same time, he took a grenade from his clothes. Seeing the actions of their companions, the other 2 people gritted their teeth. While shooting at Jiang Hai, they quickly ran toward the village entrance. Feeling that they were getting farther and farther away, Jiang Hai was also secretly angry. When he was about to reach the limit of 50 meters, Jiang Hai did not care so much. He directly threw the man who was about to be shot into pieces in his hand and got up to fight back. However, at that moment, he suddenly saw a figure pouncing toward him with a grenade in his hand. "Let's go to hell together." Fortunately, this guy still had some self-awareness. It was impossible for people like him to go to heaven, but Jiang Hai was not prepared to go to hell with him. Looking at the man who rushed over, Jiang Hai did not say a word and directly shot him, making a huge bloody hole in his chest. His heart instantly exploded, and his consciousness was blurred. The safety of the grenade in his hand had already been released, and it fell powerlessly. Jiang Hai's eyes were much faster. He knew that if the grenade fell to the ground, then he would be finished. This grenade was a tactical grenade. In addition to the explosives, there were also a lot of small steel balls. If this grenade exploded, then Jiang Hai would probably be turned into a meat paste. Seeing the grenade in front of him, Jiang Hai did not say a word. He went up and kicked the grenade in an instant. At the same time, he grabbed the dead guy and used him as a shield. Bang! With a loud explosion, the grenade exploded in midair. Countless small steel balls quickly shot in all directions. Fortunately, there was some distance from the stone house, so the tribesmen did not suffer any injuries. As for Jiang Hai, because of the meat shield on his back, he played a key role. After the explosion ended, Jiang Hai also drilled out from under the man's body. Looking at the man's back, at least a dozen steel balls were shot into his body. If it was not for this guy, then these steel balls would have hit his body. Taking advantage of this time, the 2 people on the other side had already run to the village entrance. The majority of the troops had already entered the mountain. At this time, 2 helicopters flew over from a low altitude. The revolving machine guns were also madly shooting at the people who were running away, but these 2 people were not ordinary cannons. Ordinary people would almost certainly die when facing low-altitude helicopters, but these 2 people used their own footwork, step by step, like claws and teeth, to avoid the low-altitude bullets of the helicopters. Finally, with a fish jump, they flashed into the forest. Bastards! Looking at these people escaping, Jiang Hai also sighed helplessly. Once these people entered the mountain, this matter was over. If these people were content to be rats for the rest of their lives, at least the American police would have a hard time catching them. Fortunately, Jiang Hai got 2 corpses at the last moment. Otherwise, he might not even know who they were. While Jiang Hai was thinking, the 2 helicopters on the other side also stopped outside the tribe. Then a group of people quickly ran out. Looking at these people in police uniforms, Jiang Hai also threw the gun in his hand far away, and then consciously squatted down. He knew that in the United States, it was not the time to talk about self-esteem, especially when facing the police. In the United States, if the police rushed to you, and you did not put your hands on your head and squat on the ground, the police would shoot you. This was actually not a very difficult thing to understand in the United States, especially when it happened to people of color. A while ago, there was a very popular incident. It was said that a black young man took his wife and daughter out to play. On the road, they were stopped by the police. Then the police asked him to put his hands on the steering wheel, but he was wearing a seatbelt and could not lie down. He was ready to unbuckle the seatbelt first and then lie down. As a result, the police opened fire and directly killed him in front of his wife and children. This incident caused a big sensation in the United States, and many black people protested in the streets. But in the end, the police who shot and killed the man was still unscathed. They said that he was overdoing the law enforcement, and then he was stripped of his qualifications as a police officer. He did not even go to jail. Therefore, in the United States, when facing the police rushing over, the best choice was to put your hands on your head and squat on the ground. Sometimes, the police were more terrifying than the gangsters, although it would make you suffer and hurt your self-esteem. For example, when the police rushed over, 2 of them came up and pressed Jiang Hai to the ground. They kicked away the gun and then handcuffed Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai did not say a word about this. After seeing that Jiang Hai was under control, the police rushed into the stone house. When they saw the Native Americans, the police wanted to do the same. Unfortunately, the Native Americans were not Jiang Hai. Their civilization was not connected to the outside world. Without saying anything, Patton directly picked up the gun that Jiang Hai put down and aimed at the police in front of him. When the police saw that this person dared to resist, they subconsciously wanted to shoot. Fortunately, today was a day of worship, so they were still wearing their traditional clothes. When they saw that this person was a Native American, the police did not dare to move. In a Native American tribe, if the police killed a Native American, the tribe would definitely riot. When that happened, all the responsibility would be on the police. Yes, there were people that the American police did not dare to provoke. Therefore, although the police raised their guns, they did not dare to shoot. Both sides were in a standoff. At this moment, a person in charge walked over and gestured for the police to put down their guns. Then, he looked at the people in front of him. Looking at the Native Americans in front of him, this person said calmly, "I don't know if any of you can speak English." "I know how to, sir." Hearing someone come over to talk, the chief of the tribe also walked out and said while looking at this person. Seeing that they were talking, the tension between the 2 sides eased a little. The police officer managed to get a preliminary understanding of what had happened from the family leader. At this moment, Jiang Hai was also brought over. Seeing Jiang Hai walking over, the person in charge could not help but frown. This was because he felt that Jiang Hai looked familiar, but he could not tell where they had met before. "This gentleman is our tribe's benefactor. He was the one who called the police. He was also the one who helped us to repel the enemy's attack." Seeing Jiang Hai walking over, the tribal chief said to Jiang Hai with relief. Just like he said, Jiang Hai was now their most distinguished guest. Hearing the tribal chief's words, the person in charge did not release Jiang Hai's handcuffs. Looking at Jiang Hai, the person in charge asked, "Sir, I'm sorry, we can't let you go for the time being. Can you explain the reason why you are here and your identity?" Hearing this person's words, Jiang Hai said casually, "Oh, I'm here to play. I've been playing in this forest for a while. As for my identity, my name is Jiang Hai. I live in Winthrop." "Winthrop's Jiang Hai?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the person suddenly frowned. This name was somewhat familiar. Chapter 761. Boss, it's all done. Looking at Jiang Hai coming out of the police station, Moses Adams was the first to greet him and said to Jiang Hai with a smile. Jiang Hai also smiled, but then he saw his war shield. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. This war shield is really good, at least it protected him twice. Not to mention the deer, if it weren't for this car, Jiang Hai might have been in danger. Therefore, although Jiang Hai looked at the car in a miserable state, He was really grateful for it. This car is directly left in Boston. After these people are done collecting evidence, you can help me repair this car. Looking at Moses Adams, Jiang Hai said helplessly. Of course, this is no problem. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams immediately said with a smile. Of course, the bill for the repair of the car will be sent to Jiang Hai. One must know that this car is not cheap, and the price of repairing it is not cheap either. This night, I didn't sleep well. Now I want to go home and have a good sleep. Seeing Moses Adams agree, Jiang Hai also stretched, and then said with a little helplessness. This day was full of things. After the battle last night, the police came. They were divided into two groups. One group went to chase those people, but Jiang Hai estimated that it was useless. After all, the Alabama mountains were too big. These people went deep into the mountains and forests. It would be strange if the police could find them. Next, another group of people flew a helicopter and brought Jiang Hai and his car over. Of course, there were also some people from the tribe who came back with them. These people were all witnesses, so they also had to record their statements. At the same time, the video in Jiang Hai's mobile phone was also copied. The video he took was extremely important. They would have to rely on the video and the corpses of the two mercenaries to figure out who these people were. But after knowing who Jiang Hai is, the police here were more respectful to him. Jiang Hai didn't say anything. Although he was pressed to the ground at the beginning, this was also the privilege of the American police. He could sue people if he wanted to, but after all, this was his own home, so there was no need to make things too stiff. Jiang Hai didn't say anything. Although he was pressed to the ground at first, this was also the privilege of the American police. He could sue people, but after all, this was his own home. So Jiang Hai forgave these people, and these policemen were also very grateful to Jiang Hai. In their eyes, if a rich man like Jiang Hai didn't sue them, it would be the greatest help to them. In this way, the police station was busy all night. This morning, Moses Adams finished all the procedures and picked up Jiang Hai. Just as Jiang Hai and Moses Adams were chatting, a Traz SUV appeared in front of Jiang Hai. Azalina's beautiful face also appeared. Looking at Azalina's appearance, Jiang Hai smiled and waved to Moses Adams, indicating that he will leave this matter to him. Jiang Hai immediately ran into the car and sat in the passenger seat. After seeing Jiang Hai sit down, Azalina also started the engine and the car drove away from the police station. It was very dangerous this time. When the car drove on the road, Azalina couldn't help but say to Jiang Hai. In fact, Jiang Hai could hear that there was some resentment in her words. It was understandable. After all, they were Jiang Hai's bodyguards. When such a thing happened, they were not by Jiang Hai's side. To put it bluntly, this was their dereliction of duty. To put it bluntly, they felt sorry in their hearts. So when only she and Jiang Hai were left, she complained. Oh, it's okay. This time, it's just a coincidence. I can't take you with me. Glancing at Azalina apologetically, Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Azalina couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. When we are not around, don't cause trouble. Your safety is the most important. Looking at Jiang Hai, Azalina said with a serious face, but hearing her words, Jiang Hai could only smile bitterly. Am I the one who caused trouble this time? It's just a coincidence, okay? By the way, who are those people, do you know? I asked the police just smiled and didn't tell me. What the hell is this? Looking at Azalina, Jiang Hai asked with some doubts. Of course they won't tell you. Those people are not to be trifled with. They don't tell you because they want to protect you. But since we are here, it doesn't matter if they tell you. Judging from the video you took and the photos of the two bodies, those mercenaries should be Spartacus people. Hearing Jiang Hai change the topic, Azalina didn't hold on to it and said to Jiang Hai. Before Jiang Hai's mobile phone was taken away, he deliberately sent a video and photos to Azalina just to let her check it out. It was the right thing to do. After all, it took a long time for a knife to come and go. Azalina could tell at a glance what kind of people these people were. When she heard Jiang Hai ask her, she immediately said, "Spartacus? I really haven't heard of it. What does it have to do with Spartacus?" Listening to Azalina's words, Jiang Hai said with a smile, "Spartacus is a TV series in the United States. The plot in it, hee. Let's put it this way. This TV series can only be broadcast in the middle of the night in the United States, and children are completely prohibited from watching it. The plot is quite colorful. The whole movie is mainly intertwined with red and yellow. It is also one of Jiang Hai's favorite TV series, but he can't eat while watching this TV series. It has nothing to do with the thing you're watching. This mercenary group was established during World War II. At the beginning, it was established by some defeated troops not recognized by the government in Poland. Its origin is in North America. Later, after World War II, it cooperated with the U.S. military in many ways. They can be seen on many battlefields, but the U.S. military has a lot of restrictions on this mercenary group, so they don't have any heavy weapons, but their individual skills are very strong. Listening to Azalina in front of him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. The total number of people is about 1,000? F***ck, that's 1,000 people. This time, he faced less than 100 people and almost couldn't make it back. If these 10 million people attacked his manor, wouldn't it be over? Don't worry, these people don't dare to act on a large scale in the United States, and this is just a small team of them. They are different from those local gangsters. They were originally targeted by the United States, and this time, they attacked an Indian tribe. They probably can't stay in the United States anymore. Seeing Jiang Hai's gaze, how could Azalina not understand what he was thinking? She could only comfort Jiang Hai. Sometimes, Jiang Hai was thinking too much. Phew, that's good, but 1,000 people, sigh. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was relieved. But to be honest, a mercenary group of 1,000 people, and one that was so good, Jiang Hai's heart was still a little uneasy. Don't worry, you didn't buy us sisters for nothing. We can guarantee your safety, don't worry. Seeing that Jiang Hai was still a little worried, Azalina rolled her eyes at him and said confidently, "Okay. What about the white man who was the leader? Do you know him?" Listening to her words, Jiang Hai hesitated and asked her. Whether the mercenary group will attack his manor or not, this is not something that Jiang Hai can control. It is better to know the enemy first. The mercenary group has already figured it out, but what about the white man? He is really a little curious. That white man, if I'm not mistaken, should be Lynch Walter. This guy is quite famous internationally. He's an Englishman. He says he's an explorer, but he's actually a tomb raider. Hearing Jiang Hai ask about the white man, Azalina also told him. Listening to her words, she was quite disdainful of this white man. According to Azalina's introduction, the white man named Lynch Walter was a historian at first. He graduated with a doctorate from the University of Cambridge. When he was studying for his doctorate, he studied history and had a good understanding of the history of every country. When he was 31 years old, he organized a group of people for the first time and dug up the tomb of a noble in Europe. Although he was scolded, he obtained a large number of antiques from it. He turned in a part of them and sold the rest. After gaining a large amount of money and fame, this person was somewhat addicted. He claimed that he was an explorer and wanted to find all the treasures in the world. In the following years, he has been wandering around the world, although in the eyes of the public, he basically has no news. But in the circle of rich people and in the underground world, he is still quite famous. First, because he has a lot of money. Second, because there are a lot of rich people who have a relationship with him. When he goes underground, he has to give a part of the things inside to these people to act as a protective umbrella. Moreover, these people protect him, and also give him a lot of money and cutting-edge technology. Otherwise, according to Azalina's understanding of Spartacus, this mercenary group cost $3 million to dispatch a squad, and $200,000 to settle down for each death. Jiang Hai had killed more than 20 people, which added up to more than $10 million. For Europeans and Americans who never saved money, taking out $10 million at once was not a small amount. But when it came to money, Jiang Hai really did not care. When it came to cash, he was not against anyone. There are also grave robbers abroad. Although he did not care about this man named Lynch Walter, he was still quite curious about his profession. When he was in China, he always heard about grave robbers and the like. After all, in the domestic novel system, there was only one branch, and every book was written as if it was real. Recently, the domestic movies also took the same approach. Of course, you don't play games, do you watch movies? National Treasure, Tomb Raider, and a long time ago, Indiana Jones's Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the Mummy series, are they all about grave robbing? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Azalina could not help but shrug and said. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also thought for a while. It seems that, maybe, probably, it is true. Okay. But I don't know what is in that tribe this time that is worth these people making such a big fuss over. With a wave of his hand, Jiang Hai could not help but think of the goal of these people this time. He did not know what was in that tribe. Don't even think about it. Just be a well-behaved rich man. It seems that I have to hurry up and do it with you. With your death-seeking character, if one day you're gone and I don't even give you a body, you won't be able to live in peace even as a ghost. Looking at Jiang Hai in front of her, Azalina rolled her eyes at him, then said in a very unhappy tone. Don't even think about it. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile. But to be honest, although he and Azalina had already confirmed that kind of relationship a long time ago, the two of them didn't seem to have any. It seemed that this time when he went back, he should hurry up and get it done. The car sped all the way, and not long after, they had returned to Jiang Hai's manor in Winthrop. As soon as the car stopped, Qi Jia, Chia, Feng Yunchen, Ai Xiaoxi, and others, who heard that Jiang Hai caused trouble again this time, surrounded Jiang Hai. Most of the women were looking to see if Jiang Hai was missing any parts, but a small number of them were looking at Jiang Hai's face. After all, Jiang Hai is also a man with a family now. Is it really good to be so careless all the time? Looking at their stern faces, Jiang Hai was quite happy in his heart. This means that they have him in their hearts, right? After laughing and fooling around for a day, Jiang Hai and the others went to bed very early in the evening. Although they hardly slept last night, Jiang Hai was still quite energetic tonight. With his physical fitness, it didn't matter if he didn't sleep all night. As the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Feng Yunchen, Ai Xiaoxi, Qi Jia, and Chia, who had not felt Jiang Hai for almost 20 days, worked very hard. Usually, they were always separated, but tonight, they were together. They had a good time in Jiang Hai's room. For them, today's Jiang Hai was not only a person who came back after leaving home, but also a person who had just experienced an accident. It was not until late at night that the five of them fell asleep. The next morning, when Jiang Hai woke up, he found that Chia had already prepared breakfast for him. After breakfast, Jiang Hai strolled around his manor as usual. He had been away for nearly a month, so he wanted to take a good look at his manor and see if there were any changes. He also wanted to discuss the future development of the manor with Dulles Gerard, Robbins Garcia, and Edouard Anderson. Chapter 762. Ah, it's so hot. Jiang Hai muttered softly as he sat under the shade of a tree in front of the villa. It was cool inside the villa because there was an air conditioner. However, when the air conditioner was turned on in the villa, they were not allowed to open the windows. Jiang Hai would feel a little stuffy if he stayed in the villa for a long time. However, it was really too hot outside. He raised his head and looked at the sun that seemed to be getting hotter and hotter. He could not help but let out a long breath. Although Jiang Hai's physical fitness was getting better and better, it was not to the point where he could not avoid the cold and heat. Therefore, he was hot in the summer and cold in the winter. The weather in July is really unbearable. Jiang Hai could not help but sigh as he felt the rising temperature around him and saw the usually lively Xiao Bai and Xiao Huang lying on the ground in the shade. After Jiang Hai celebrated the new year this year, he returned to Winthrop. His schedule was very busy. He came back in March to plant fruits and harvest fish. In April, he went to the beef show. At the end of April, he went to the Magaon wine competition. In May, he went to the Brussels wine competition. There was also Azalina's auction. When he came back, it was already June. After staying at home for more than 10 days, he felt that he was about to level up, so he went outside. 20 days had passed. When Jiang Hai came back the day before yesterday, it was already the 3rd of July. On the 3rd, he spent a good night with Qi Jia, Chia, Feng Yunchen, and Ai Xiaoxi. The next day, he went to the manor to get a general understanding of the recent situation. During the days that he was away, nothing happened in his manor. It was very peaceful. Sometimes, Pra Walton and Zhang Dihai would call Robbins Garcia and tell him how many cows to prepare. Then, they would come over to pick them up at the exact number. Because they had worked together for a year last year, they were already familiar with the process. Otherwise, Du Feynman's people or Luke Sean's people would call and tell Robbins Garcia how much fodder they needed and how many cows they had to pick them up at the exact number. They had already prepared for this long ago. Although Jiang Hai bought a lot of new land, he was benevolent and righteous. He still hasn't recovered the land yet. After recovering the land, he wouldn't be able to use the land directly. He would have to refence the land, clear the grass, and plant new grass. He didn't want ordinary pasture. These pasture were to be sold, so naturally, he wouldn't use ordinary species. Now that he was in his manor, he could not get any more fodder. But for the new ranch, he must get good fodder. Even if he sold fodder, he had to sell his conscience. He only planned to plant 2 types of forage grass in the new pasture. One was the emperor of all forages, the emperor bamboo grass, and the other was the alfalfa, which was known as the best forage grass in the world. These 2 types of forage grass were not easy to grow, especially the latter. The alfalfa had the highest nutrition. But the reason why this type of grass was not planted on a large scale was that the growth of this type of grass had very high requirements. There were requirements for humidity, temperature, altitude, and so on. Therefore, people all over the world knew that this type of grass was good, but there were not many who could use it as fodder. However, Jiang Hai did not have to worry about this. After all, Jiang Hai's spiritual energy could help them break through these requirements. He believed that with these 2 types of fodder, not only the cattle on his ranch, but also the cattle bought by Luke Sean and Du Feynman would have a good effect. But it was useless to talk about this now. After all, the ranch had not been recovered yet. Everything was fine on Robbins Garcia's side, and Edouard Anderson's side was basically on the right track. The new fishing boat was in place, and Edouard Anderson divided all the fishermen into 2 teams. He and Marlon Rupert were captains respectively. When the first team went fishing at night, the second team would get up in the morning to deliver the fish. After the second team went fishing at night, the first team, which had rested for a day, would get up in the morning to deliver the fish and go fishing at night. The 2 teams took turns. It could be said that all the fishermen were not tired, and it was not too exhausting. The most important thing was that the income was considerable. The fish raised in Jiang Hai's manor had earned a lot of money in the past few days. It was not only the supermarkets of Prawalton's Sam's Club, but also almost all the top seafood restaurants in Boston. Note that Jiang Hai was talking about the top seafood restaurants, and they all used Jiang Hai's seafood. The taste had become famous, and the tourists in Winthrop were more attracted to Jiang Hai's seafood. In the beginning, Jiang Hai mainly sold lobsters when he sold seafood. But now, he basically sold everything. Fishing was not like slaughtering cows. It was not so precise. It was better to catch more than 100 kilograms of fish every day. Except for the extra fish that was to be sent to the restaurant and Pra Walton, there was no more fish left. In addition to the people in the manor eating, the tourists and the restaurants in Winthrop would arrive at the entrance of Jiang Hai's manor very early every morning, waiting for the fish truck to come. There was no more fish left, and they wanted as much as they could get. Therefore, Edward Anderson's recent days were quite good. With Jiang Hai selling the seafood at 3 or 4 times the market price, they could get a considerable amount of money at the end of the year. Robbins Garcia and Edward Anderson were quite comfortable these days, while Dulles Gerard was simply happy. After winning the 2 awards, some European people began to come over to buy Jiang Hai's red wine. However, according to what Jiang Hai said, he only sold a few bottles less. These bottles of wine should be kept in storage. Although he had not created enough profit, Dulles Gerard was already very satisfied, because he had proven his strength. Jiang Hai did not want to sell the wine. If he wanted to, the wine in the wine warehouse alone could be sold for tens of millions. This was also the wealth he had created, and the old man was not as eager to prove himself as before. Jiang Hai was also happy. The wine had not been fully developed yet, and he would sell it next year or the year after. Jiang Hai would be merciful if he did not blackmail the other party for $2,000 a bottle. It must be noted that Jiang Hai's winery, which was this vineyard, could produce more than 40,000 bottles of wine every year. $2,000 a bottle was nearly $100 million. Although it was still a little less than the fish and beef, it must be noted that this did not require much labor and cost. This was completely free money for Jiang Hai. Thinking about it, Jiang Hai's manor could currently sell $1.5 billion a year for beef, $1.5 billion for fish, and $100 million for red wine. He could earn $1 billion a year, plus the money from selling grass. Now, he had expanded so much land. If he sold grass for $900 million a year, it would be easy for him to earn $4 billion in total. In addition, he had expanded the fish farm, and his income from the fish farm would only be higher in the future. It was $1.5 billion now, and it might be $2 billion or $2.5 billion in the future. According to Jiang Hai's calculation, $5 billion a year did not seem to be a problem. And this was under the condition that Jiang Hai didn't really want to make money. After paying taxes, Jiang Hai could still have more than $2 billion a year. Thinking this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be amused. In fact, money was a bastard. Look, no matter how much you spent, you could earn it back in a short time. Of course, this was only what Jiang Hai was saying now. It must be noted that 2 years ago, all his assets added together were less than $20,000. Jiang Hai was quite realistic. Jiang Hai, we're going to the beach. Do you want to come with us? Just as Jiang Hai was thinking about the money he would earn in the future, a crisp voice sounded from a distance. Jiang Hai didn't need to look to know that it was Qi Jie's voice. Sure enough, looking around, Qi Jie was wearing an orange bikini with Xiao Bai on it. She was wearing a towel and a pair of big sunglasses. She was looking at Jiang Hai at the door. Yes, of course. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also felt that it was a good choice to go swimming now, so he jumped down from the recliner and said to her, "Then come in and help clean up." Hearing that Jiang Hai wanted to go, Qi Jie also waved to him. Seeing her action, Jiang Hai also walked into the villa with a smile. As soon as he walked in, he couldn't help but feel that his eyes were bright. At this time, this villa was really eye-catching. Qi Jie said that she wanted to go to the beach. Naturally, it was impossible for her to be the only one who wanted to go. So now in Jiang Hai's villa, it was a perfect swimsuit show. Except for Qi Jie, Qia was wearing a black and white one-piece swimsuit. When she saw Jiang Hai coming in, she was still a little confused. Except for her, the others were wearing bikinis. Ai Xiaoxi was wearing a pure white, but it was not big. The triangular pocket in front of her was very round. The trousers on the lower body were okay in the front, but the back could be clearly seen. Feng Yunshin was even bolder. She was wearing the kind that didn't even have a belt on the top. It was the kind that was directly buttoned in the front. It was very tempting. The lower body was flesh-colored with a floral pattern, which looked very beautiful. Afra and the others, who didn't go to the grape garden today, were also here. They were wearing the clothes that Jiang Hai had seen before. Basically, they were bought by Pra Walton. Although Jiang Hai also gave them a lot of money, they really didn't spend much money on these clothes. However, they really didn't know how to spend the money. Now that they were wearing these clothes, they were naturally quite beautiful. Daliana and Marian were more conservative than them. Although they were also bikinis, they were the cute type. The upper body was white with a heart-shaped pattern on it. The lower body was pure white with a small skirt. Jiang Hai didn't allow them to dress too provocatively. After all, they were his daughters. Since they said that they were going, naturally Azalina, Galina, and Wallace Shelley were also going. Azalina was wearing a more conservative black bikini, which really gave off a mysterious feeling. Because what she was wearing now was not a bikini, but just a navel-bearing dress, that was all. "Where are your clothes?" Looking at Galina, Jiang Hai leaned over with some doubts and asked her. "Well, inside." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Galina's face couldn't help but blush, and then she whispered. She naturally knew what Jiang Hai's so-called clothes were, and it couldn't be the one she was wearing now. "You still want to wear this?" Looking at her, Jiang Hai couldn't help but say with a little dumbfounded. "It's none of your business, humph." Hearing Jiang Hai still asking, Galina couldn't help but become a little angry. After wrinkling her nose and snorting, she went out first. They were going to the beach to play, although this sea was Jiang Hai's. They could go at any time, but they couldn't just go to play in the water and come back. Before that, Chiya and the others had already prepared food, sunscreen, folding chairs, umbrellas, and so on. Naturally, Jiang Hai had to prepare them. After deliberately going upstairs to change into a pair of swimming trunks, Jiang Hai left first because the sunscreen, umbrellas and other things were still at the dock. Driving his own four-wheeled motorcycle, Little Huang and Xiao Bai also followed Jiang Hai all the way. Not long after, they came to the front of the manor's dock. At this time, at the dock, Edward Anderson and the others, who were preparing to sail tonight, had just returned from delivering fish. At this time, they were also quite hot and were enjoying the cool air over there. After seeing Jiang Hai coming over, they also greeted Jiang Hai. After Jiang Hai explained the purpose of his visit, Edward Anderson and the others took the initiative to help Jiang Hai carry the umbrella and went to the only flat beach nearby. This beach was indeed a good place to play because it was all fine sand, and the beach area extended very far into the sea. It was almost 50 meters deep. Not far behind was the forest, and there was wind, but it was not too strong and was very cool. This was not the first time Jiang Hai and the others came here. After arriving here, Jiang Hai and the others put an umbrella in every 2 or 3 meters. After everything was done, Edward Anderson and the others sensibly left. It should be known that the people playing here were all the women in Jiang Hai's room. These women were not people they could see, so after saying goodbye to Jiang Hai, they directly left. Jiang Hai waited here for more than 10 minutes. With the sound of a motor, the girls in Jiang Hai's room also came over. Chapter 763. Jiang Hai, do me a favor, help me apply sunscreen. Lying on a deck chair, Qi Jia lazily said to Jiang Hai next to her. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also laughed at himself, but he still put down the phone in his hand and walked over. As soon as they arrived at the seaside, everyone began to get busy. As the only man, Jiang Hai had a lot of things to do. For example, he had to set up the deck chairs that they brought along and put them under the umbrella. The girls, on the other hand, had a lot of free time. After setting up the stove, they lit up the charcoal and began to burn it. When it came to barbecue, there was a very important point. That is, when the charcoal has just been burned, it can't be barbecued, because when the new charcoal is burned, it will produce a lot of poisonous gases, such as carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and so on. Jiang Hai didn't know the specifics. His chemistry was also taught by his physical education teacher, but it will indeed produce poisonous gases. At this time, barbecuing directly, because the barbecued person is too close, it is easy to be poisoned, and there will also be some residue on the barbecued meat. So people who often barbecued understand that before barbecuing, the most important thing is to raise the charcoal. After the charcoal is burned, put more on it, and then let it burn until all the charcoal is no longer black, it is all red inside, and the outside is gray. At that time, the fire will be high, and there will be no poisonous things. So people often see that some barbecue shops that open at night will start to burn charcoal at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This is to raise the charcoal. Jiang Hai and the others naturally didn't burn charcoal for the first time, so they were familiar with it. After setting up the stove, they dug 2 big holes in the sand pit, and then put the beer and the box of ice and meat that they brought over in the sand pit to let the water constantly wash and keep it cool. These girls also played. As Alina was the first to dive down, Jiang Hai didn't worry about her safety under the water. Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi were also playing on the beach, while Aphrodite and the others were in the shallow water. Although Daliana and Marian were 16 years old, they still looked young and were playing with sand on the beach. Jiang Hai, Qi Jia, and Chia were lying on the beach. Chia, the quiet girl, was watching a Korean drama on her mobile phone. Recently, it was said that there was a ban on Korean dramas in China. However, in the United States, to be honest, the culture of Japan and South Korea was much more recognized than that of Wuxia. After all, from a strategic point of view, Japan and South Korea were the godson of the United States. Alright, it was better for Jiang Hai not to talk about politics now. Anyway, it was just watching Korean dramas, and he was not addicted to it. Just as Jiang Hai was about to play games there, Qi Jia called out to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai didn't say anything to refuse. He walked to her side, dug out a piece of sunscreen, and rubbed it on her back. Although the two just played together last night, Jiang Hai's big hand seemed to have magic. When it touched Qi Jia's back, her body couldn't help but shake, and then her legs clamped together. Wipe it thoroughly. Looking at Jiang Hai, who stopped moving after feeling the change in her body, Qi Jia couldn't help but raise her head and glanced at him, then gently untied the bikini strap on her back. In an instant, the bikini sides fell down, and in Jiang Hai's sight, a pair of hemispheres appeared in front of him. Then I won't be polite. Looking at the scene in front of him, Jiang Hai smiled, and then his big hand began to wipe Qi Jia's back. Of course, his hand would wipe Qi Jia's sides from time to time. Every time Jiang Hai's hand brushed the sides, it would make Qi Jia tremble, but she didn't say anything to stop it, because she also liked this feeling. After Jiang Hai's hand wiped the back for more than 10 minutes, his hand slid down to the lower body. Qi Jia's straight legs and perfect feet were all displayed in front of Jiang Hai one by one. To be honest, he didn't know if it was because of the transformation of spiritual energy, or these girls originally had such a level. These girls' figures were quite good, and they were quite hot. In addition, Qi Jia liked to exercise and boxing. Therefore, her whole body was particularly strong. Touching it with his hand, it was like a water ball with bath gel. It felt soft and slippery in his hand, making him unable to stop. It could be said that whether it was the waist, legs, feet, hands, face, and some parts on the front that couldn't be described, according to the old internet language, they were all things that could be played with for a year. If they were combined together, they could be played with for a lifetime. Just like Jiang Hai now, he was a little reluctant to let go. His hand rose from the ankle, calf, thigh, and then to some parts that couldn't be described. Looking at the pair of shorts, Jiang Hai's hand also slid in. Feeling Jiang Hai's movements, Qi Jia's body couldn't help but tremble violently. However, she didn't stop Jiang Hai, and let Jiang Hai's hand wander around here. Not long after, he was no longer satisfied with 2 lumps, but walked to the middle of the 2 lumps. As soon as his finger slid in, Qi Jia couldn't help but let out a low moan from her throat, and then she gave Jiang Hai a reproachful look. Jiang Hai knew that it was the part she hadn't explored yet, but with the lubricity of the sunscreen, Jiang Hai's hand began to invade. There, humph. Following Jiang Hai's movements, Qi Jia whispered to Jiang Hai. But unfortunately, Jiang Hai's hand didn't stop there. Seeing that Jiang Hai was still making trouble, Qi Jie gently bit her lips, and then instantly took out something that couldn't be described from Jiang Hai's part and bit it hard. At this time, everyone didn't know that Jiang Hai and Qi Jie had unknowingly started a war here. Just as Jiang Hai was about to start a full-scale war, Qi Jie in front of him suddenly screamed, and then her body trembled. In fact, everyone here, except for Delina and Marion, knew what this meant, but they didn't think about it that way. After hearing Qi Jie's voice, everyone looked over. And the closest one was Qi. When she heard Qi Jie's voice, she couldn't help but ask, "Sister, are you okay?" Oh, I'm fine." Hearing Qi's words, Qi Jie's face couldn't help but blush, and then she immediately stuffed Jiang Hai back. Regardless of whether he was uncomfortable or not, she quickly fastened the strap on her back, pretending that nothing had happened. Looking at her like this, Jiang Hai really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What should I do now? Find a way to solve it yourself. Seeing the expression on Jiang Hai's face, Qi Jie couldn't help but glanced at Jiang Hai, then whispered. As soon as Jiang Hai heard her words, he knew that she wasn't going to help him anymore, but he didn't have the habit of forcing girls to do things, so he was ready to go back to lie down. He estimated that he would be fine after a while. But at this moment, he found that Jia Lina was walking into the woods in the distance. Needless to say, she was going to change her swimsuit. Seeing this, Jiang Hai rolled his eyes and quietly followed her. At this time, Jia Lina didn't know that Jiang Hai was still following her. After walking into the forest, she hid behind a big tree and began to take off her coat. As her coat was taken off, a black swimsuit with a similar style to Hua Lizi's swimsuit appeared in the air. Azalina had her own swimsuit. After all, she had been here for so long, it was impossible for her not to have gone swimming. Jia Lina's and Hua Lizi's swimsuits should have been bought together. Looking at Jia Lina's cold and arrogant manner, he knew that it was impossible for her to pick it out herself. It must have been Hua Lizi who picked it out for her. However, such a beautiful scenery benefited Jiang Hai at this time. As soon as Jiang Hai came over, he saw Jia Lina taking off her pants. As soon as Jiang Hai came over, she noticed Jiang Hai. Her eyes swept over directly, but after seeing that it was Jiang Hai, she was a little unnatural. She wanted to pull up her pants immediately, and at the same time, she said to Jiang Hai, "What are you doing here?" "I came here to see the beautiful scenery." How could Jiang Hai let her return to her original state? Then he stepped on the ground. In the next second, he had appeared in front of her. He directly grabbed her hands, forcibly raised both of them, and then pressed her against the big tree. I am changing my clothes." What are you doing?" Looking at Jiang Hai's face getting closer and closer, Jia Lina felt that she was about to faint. She stubbornly raised her head and said courageously. But unfortunately, her stubborn look now was very much in line with Jiang Hai's mood. Looking at Jia Lina in front of him, Jiang Hai lowered his head and kissed her. Feeling Jiang Hai's fanaticism and his actions, Jia Lina was even more unable to resist. About 10 minutes later, Jia Lina suddenly pushed Jiang Hai away forcefully. Her pretty face was full of red. I understand. I know what to do." Looking at Jiang Hai's gaze that was like a wolf seeing its prey, Jia Lina immediately waved her hand, indicating that she understood. Then she slowly squatted down and took off her swimsuit. Half an hour later, as Jia Lina kept coughing, the desire on Jiang Hai's face receded a little. "Cough, is it okay now?" Wiping the corners of her mouth, Jia Lina looked at Jiang Hai and said with some shyness. "It's not that easy." Listening to Jia Lina wanting to run, Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh and directly pulled her to nowhere. "As for what to do next, I can't write, please imagine it yourself." Just as Jiang Hai's family was relaxing by the beach, in New York's Suicide Resort, a white man's face was quite ugly. Wall Street, a street whose reputation was much greater than its actual size. Although the three words Wall Street referred to a street, it generally referred to the financial center of the world. Although he was reluctant to admit it, the wealth on this street was the most abundant in the world. Wall Street was located in the southern part of Manhattan, New York, extending from Broadway Road to the East River. The total length was only about 500 meters. According to the public transportation in domestic cities, it was only one stop. The width was only 11 meters, just like the Champs-Élysées. The most famous thing about this long street was its name. The Morgan conglomerate, Rockefeller, DuPont Consortium, and so on, all the banks, insurance companies, railways, and other companies that were set up here were all concentrated here. And the place with the largest flow of people here was the legendary New York Stock Exchange. Why was this place called a suicide hotspot? Because every financial crisis started here. Then they went bankrupt and even owed the banks tens of millions or hundreds of millions of yuan. If they couldn't afford the money, what else could they do? Just jump. So, don't stop here casually. Because if you stop to make a phone call, someone might jump down from a building dozens of stories high and hit you, or hit your car. Anyway, no matter what it hit, it was your bad luck, because you didn't buy a suicide insurance policy. Especially once the financial collapse happened, it would be like dumplings. Hundreds of people would die every day. It was really not a big deal. At this time, in the trading hall of Nasdaq, before Jiang Hai left, he asked Moses Adams to deal with the second of the three people. Mariang Smith's face was really pale at this time, so pale that there was no trace of blood in his face. Because his biggest reliance had disappeared. Watching Moses Adams sign his name in front of him, he felt that his life had become gray. He couldn't imagine what he would do in the future. Sorry, you provoked someone you shouldn't provoke. This is also my job. Looking at his dazed look, Moses Adams walked over, patted him on the shoulder, and said with a smile. At the same time, he took out a form. All the companies that Mariang Smith's venture capital company had invested in were written on the form. But unfortunately, at this time, 3/4 of these companies had been crossed out, and today's most important first item was also crossed out. 12% of Alphabet's shares. If you don't understand the name of the company, Alphabet, then let me put it in another way. You must know that it is Google. Last year, after Google's Google Glass project failed, Google lost a lot of money. So on August 11th, Google's co-founder and CEO officially announced the news of the company's restructuring. He would start another new holding company with Google's co-founders, which was Alphabet. The shares would automatically be converted into shares with the same benefits and rights. Compared to some companies after restructuring, Google was quite impressive. After the restructuring, in February this year, Google even surpassed Apple and became the world's largest IT company, with a market value of $565 billion. Jiang Hai never played with the internet. First, because he didn't know how to play and didn't trust it. How many people died during the Nasdaq bubble? He pushed the money to these illusory things. Second, because he didn't need to play with it. His manner was enough for him to play with. But this time, Moses Adams helped him acquire something good. Chapter 764. This is not over. Gritting his teeth and lowering his head, Mariang Smith's voice seemed to come from his throat. I didn't say it was over, did I? My boss's original words were to kill you, not make you bankrupt. I think you know very well the difference between the two. Hearing Mariang Smith's words, Moses Adams also said with a smile. Yes, although he feels sorry, he will still do what he needs to do. If he wants to make Jiang Hai unhappy, then he won't be happy. Can he beat Jiang Hai when it comes to some things that are borderline? What a joke. The United States, to put it bluntly, is still a paradise for the rich. Whoever has money has reason. Jiang Hai is now richer than him, so even if Jiang Hai forces him to death, it is Jiang Hai's reason. This is the horror of a capitalist society. Damn it. I tell you, there is an old saying in Wuxia, 30 years to the west, 30 years to the east. Don't bully a poor young man. Everything I lost today, my money, my self-esteem, my bottom line, I will get these things back sooner or later. Looking at Moses Adams ridiculing him without caring at all, Mariang Smith was about to go crazy. He glared at him and said with a serious face. If Jiang Hai was here, he would have to consider whether this guy's engagement was also broken off at the same time. But even if the engagement was broken off, Jiang Hai didn't care. This is a real world, not a fantasy world. There is no dragon group here, no internal strength, no superhero. This is a farming novel that is a little off track. There are no mountain spirits, ghosts, or grandpas to make him stronger and regain his dignity. So what he lost is what he lost, it's as simple as that. Then I wish you success in advance. Hearing his words, Moses Adams couldn't help but chuckle, and then walked out of the hall. Just as he walked out, Penelope Daller also followed him out with the document. The situation on Mariang Smith's side is almost settled, but there are some problems on the island side. Sitting in Moses Adams's car, Penelope Dahl looked at the contract in her hands seriously and said helplessly. Then let's take it slow. I just found a good toy for the boss. I think he should like it. Hearing Penelope's words, Moses Adams chuckled and looked at the contract he had just signed. Jiang Hai doesn't understand finance. He doesn't understand it at all. He probably knows what stocks and futures are about. It's similar to collecting antiques. You buy it for 1 million yuan, wait for it to appreciate, and sell it when it rises to 2 million yuan. In this way, even if you make 1 million yuan, the stock is almost the same, but what you get is not a real thing, but some illusory company shares. If the company's income is good, it earns a lot and has a big impact, the company's shares will be valuable. For example, if 1 million shares are issued at 10 yuan each, then the company's market value will be 10 million yuan. But this company made something, such as mobile phones, which were very profitable and in short supply. They sold mobile phones for 30 million yuan a year. At the end of the year, according to the equity division, one share can be divided into 30 yuan, which is worth 40 yuan. At this time, the company's shares are valuable. Some people will spend 40, 50, or 60 yuan to buy them. Slowly, the price will rise. However, if the company's products were not worth much and lost a lot of money in a year, the products that were bought with 10 yuan might only be worth 2 or 3 yuan when they were sold. In that case, the company would lose money. It would not even be considered a loss. Then, the company would go bankrupt. Jiang Hai didn't know how to play with finance, but that was probably what he meant. Moses Adams was an expert in this field. His way of dealing with the Cartwright Company is to first raise the stock price. The stock price was raised from 10 yuan to nearly 100 yuan. In this way, the company's market value is equivalent to nearly 10 times. But the company is not worth that much money. Therefore, when he raised the price to nearly $100, he suddenly sold the shares at a very low price. This caused a drop in price. At the same time, the shareholders who held the shares would also panic. Seeing that the price continued to be sold at such a low price, these people would sell their shares when the price was not very low. But the problem was that the company's shares were only worth $12. If you sold them at $50, the people who really knew the industry would not sell. Even if they wanted to buy, they would buy the shares that Moses Adams had sold for a few dollars, or even tens of cents. With such a strong force, the shareholders became more and more afraid and worried. In the end, the price is like a snowball, falling continuously. The Cartwright Company came out to save the market at this time to buy all the shares. At this time, it is time to see who has more money. In the end, Moses Adams, also known as Jiang Hai, was richer. The stock price of the Cartwright Company collapsed. Originally, it was worth more than $10, but in the end, it couldn't be sold for more than $10. It could only be sold for a few dollars, or even dozens of dollars. Even if he wanted to cut off his own flesh, he didn't want the company to go bankrupt for real. After clearing out the loose shares outside, coupled with the sharp drop in the value of the shares in the hands of these people, Moses Adams casually swept up the shares in the hands of some shareholders. More than 50% of the Cartwright Company's shares are easy to buy. In the company, whoever has the most shares will have the most say. It is that simple. Then, the Cartwright family is kicked out of the company. Their shares are bought at the market price, which is a few dollars, or tens of cents. Then, they are divided into scattered shares and thrown into the market. At this time, the original company will be sold according to the original market value. This depends on the level of negotiation. Moses Adams's skills were not bad, so he took over the Cartwright company and earned $150 million. But for Mariong Smith, it is a little troublesome. Mariong Smith's company is mainly funded by venture capital, which means he has a lot of shares in listed companies. This has to be done slowly. Fortunately, the results of the past few days were not bad. Mariong Smith's biggest reliance was Google's shares. These shares not only represented money, but also some power. I have to tell the boss this good news immediately. Moses Adams smacked his lips. He was really excited. These were Google shares, 0.2% of the company's total value. Although they might not be worth a lot of money, only a few $100 million, the problem was that these shares were a symbol of status in the United States. These shares were enough to enter the board of directors. Thinking of this, Moses Adams immediately called Jiang Hai. But unfortunately, no one was willing to give him a call. Because at this time, Jiang Hai has no time to deal with his matters. He is waging war in the small forest. About an hour later, Jiang Hai walked out of the woods with Zhao Lina, who was a little weak all over, and then put her directly on a recliner. She originally wanted to go into the water to play, but now she has no strength at all. After getting her a bottle of juice, Jiang Hai also returned to his recliner with a smile. "You pervert, you should have a picnic in a while." After Jiang Hai lay down, Qi Jia couldn't help but frown and said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai can't help but glare at her. "Whose responsibility is it, don't you know in your heart?" Looking at Qi Jia, Jiang Hai said with a face full of hatred. "Humph." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Jia naturally understood what was going on, but she just blushed. She didn't mean to admit defeat. She straightened her neck and no longer looked at Jiang Hai. Looking at her proud look, Jiang Hai also smiled. He can really be angry with her over these trivial matters. Speaking of which, Jiang Hai has always felt that he owed Qi Jia, Chia, Ai Xiaoxi, and the others. After all, these girls originally had a very good future before following him. Finding a person who loves them and living a plain life is actually quite good, but now they are following him. He is unlikely to give them a name, and it is unlikely that he will only have them by his side. The original love is now divided into many parts, so Jiang Hai's heart still has some feelings of debt to them. Although it is not heavy, it has always been there. It is precisely because of this that Jiang Hai usually spoils them. Seeing that Qi Jia did not speak, Jiang Hai also lay down, but he felt something on his back. He touched it and took out his phone. He was going to continue playing the game, but he didn't expect to see a call from Moses Adams as soon as he opened it. Then Jiang Hai dialed the phone back. The phone rang a few times, and it was picked up by Moses Adams. "Hello, Moses, why are you calling me?" Listening to Moses Adams's voice over the phone, Jiang Hai also asked him. To be honest, he was really curious about why this person called him. "Hee, I'm calling to give the boss a surprise." "Boss, I got you a share." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams couldn't help but laugh. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, he was quite excited. "Share? What share?" Hearing his words, Jiang Hai asked with some doubts. He really didn't understand this. "It's Google, 0.2% of the shares." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams also said excitedly. "This share. What's the use of it?" Hearing his excited words, Jiang Hai was still very calm because he didn't play in stocks. "This thing is very useful. Google shares? And it's 1.2%? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Jia, who had ignored Jiang Hai, suddenly turned her head and said to Jiang Hai seriously. What's the use of it?" Hearing Qi Jia say that this thing is useful, Jiang Hai was also stunned. He thought that he didn't have the brain of a trader, and the most important thing is that he wrote about it when he read novels at home. The stock market is just a place for those financial tycoons to collect money and raise sheep. When they feel that it's about time, they will come out and buy a batch. That thing should not be gold and silver, nor antiques. If you say that it should be valuable, then it should be valuable. Bullshit. Hence, he had always kept a respectful distance from the stock market. He would stay as far away from it as possible and would never touch it. Now Moses Adams got him some shares. To be honest, he didn't like it very much. If you don't understand, then listen carefully. Having more than 1,000th of the shares means that you are qualified to enter the board of directors. I think you should know what Google is. It is the world's largest search engine. Let me tell you 3 benefits first. First, if you become famous, you can print Google's director on the back of your business card when you go out. Even if your manor is 10 times bigger, your status among the higher-ups will still be that of a manor owner. But it is different now. You are an entrepreneur, and a top one at that. Second, you can use this identity to expand more businesses. You should understand this without me saying it. You can make friends with more rich people. Third, the most important thing is that you have conquered the most important platform for the Soaring Dragon Group to advertise. Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Jia was not only a doctor, but also very sensitive to these things. She directly said to Jiang Hai. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but blink. She said it like it was true. What's the use of these shares? How much are these shares worth? According to what you said, people can enter Google's board of directors by spending 800 million yuan? Although the second and third points were very tempting for Jiang Hai, the problem was that these shares were not worth 1 billion yuan or 10 billion yuan. What's the use of these shares if they were only worth 800 million yuan? What you have is equity, not stocks. Stocks are scattered notes, used for trading. What you have is equity, it can be used for dividends. Hearing Jiang Hai's layman words, Qi Jia couldn't help but roll her eyes and said to him. Is she right? Hearing Qi Jia's words, Jiang Hai was also a little uncertain. He asked Moses Adams on the other side of the phone. Is this thing really that powerful? Miss Bernice is right. I got shares for you. You are qualified to enter the board of directors. The words of Jiang Hai and Qi Jia were clearly heard by Moses Adams on the other side of the phone. At this time, he was driving back to Boston. He couldn't help but show a wry smile. He forgot that Jiang Hai was a layman. It's useless to be so excited about this. Jiang Hai is the most important thing. After talking for a long time, Jiang Hai doesn't understand the most tragic thing. But fortunately, there are many capable people around Jiang Hai, so he didn't let him work in vain. And after getting a definite answer, Jiang Hai was very happy. With this identity, he can open up more channels to sell his goods. At the same time, he can also find opportunities to advertise. This is indeed something that should make him excited. He announced on the spot that he would give Moses Adams a reward, but he didn't give it now. He would wait until all the things were solved. Chapter 765. Moses Adams knows that Jiang Hai has never been a stingy person. Naturally, he also cares about such verbal rewards because he knows that this is what he can get. Boss, someone should contact you soon to register the transfer of shares at Google's headquarters. You can go there when it is convenient for you. The transfer of shares is not the transfer of shares. Especially for a big company like Google, they have to examine the temperament of each shareholder. Although it was only 2% or 2%, it could be said that for a large company like this, it was nothing. But after all, Jiang Hai also has the right to vote, so it is inevitable to check his character. If Jiang Hai is really bad, then they may not let Jiang Hai join the board of directors. They may even directly convert the shares in Jiang Hai's hands into shares, so this place must be visited. Let's talk about it later. It is summer recently. Even if Jiang Hai doesn't understand these things, he knows that the headquarters of high-tech companies like Google and Apple are in California. It is summer now. Why would he go there? Why would he go there? Okay, they contacted me. I will confirm the time with you. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams also knows that Jiang Hai hates the heat there. In fact, he also hates it. As Jiang Hai's lawyer, if Jiang Hai goes there, he must also go. In this case, it is better to wait until winter. California is a good place in winter. This time, there is a channel for promotion. Hanging up the phone, Jiang Hai sat on the recliner, his face full of excitement. It is said that people who like to smile will have a good fate. In fact, it is understandable when you think about it. People with bad fate can't smile. Look at you, you are not leaving again, right? Watching Jiang Hai hang up the phone, Qi Jia glanced at him, then asked him somewhat ambiguously. Although she and Jiang Hai usually bickered, this was also a love-hate relationship. To be honest, she really didn't want Jiang Hai to leave her, even if she wasn't the only woman by his side. Don't worry. He probably won't leave for the next few months. We'll talk about it again in winter. Jiang Hai smiled and said to her. Hearing that Jiang Hai would not leave in the near future, Qi Jia glared at him and then continued to bask in the sun. At this time, Jiang Hai also saw that the charcoal fire had been completely lit in the distance. He walked over and put in some new charcoal. Jiang Hai thought for a moment and then walked over to Qi Jia and Qi Ya. It's a bit monotonous to just eat barbecue later. I'll go catch some seafood. What do you want to eat? Looking at the two women, Jiang Hai also asked them. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, several people here looked over. The sea was ruthless, but everyone knew that Jiang Hai's swimming was not ordinary. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, several people here remembered, but Qi Jia and Qi Ya didn't speak yet. In the distance, Jiao Lina whispered first, if it's not troublesome, you can bring me a few squid. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but walk over and give her a slap on the butt. What trouble are you talking to me about? Really? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, although Jiao Lina didn't say anything, she was very happy in her heart. Just like what Jiang Hai said, he also regarded her as a family. This kind of feeling, she didn't have before. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Ya thought for a moment and said to Jiang Hai, I want to eat codfish. If you have one, just catch one. It doesn't have to be too big. I want black codfish, not silver codfish or codfish. Me? I want to eat shrimp. You can do whatever you want. At this time, Qi Jia also said. After hearing their words, Jiang Hai made an okay gesture, then went to the four-wheeled motorcycle in the distance, took out a spear gun, which is used to shoot codfish, and added a metal net bag. After taking it, he asked the others what they wanted to eat, but these people didn't have anything to choose because they were playing now. After confirming, Jiang Hai also walked into the sea, then plunged into the water. At first, he was floating, but after swimming for about 10 minutes, after confirming that everyone couldn't see him, Jiang Hai also plunged into the sea. Jiang Hai entered the sea more comfortably than on land, and his speed was faster. He ignored the water pressure and almost instantly dropped below 10 meters. Compared with the 30 degrees outside, the sea was much colder. Above 5 meters, it was still okay, about 20 degrees, but below 5 meters, below 10 meters, but fortunately, Jiang Hai was already prepared, so he didn't care. After diving about 20 meters, Jiang Hai stepped on the water while preparing the ingredients to be roasted today. Just now, Qi Jia, Qi Ya, and Jiao Lina ordered shrimp, codfish, and squid. Shrimp was at the bottom of the sea, there was no need to worry. Jiang Hai really had to look for codfish, as for squid, whoosh. As Jiang Hai stretched out his hand, a squid the size of 2 palms was caught in his hand. What a joke, squid was raised by Jiang Hai as fish to be eaten. It would be strange if there weren't a lot of them. Originally, these squid, even if they grew for 5 years, were almost the size of a palm, but Jiang Hai's feng shui was good. The squid here were not small. Generally speaking, they were the size of 2 palms. When cooking, the teeth and internal organs in the mouth were removed. Whether it was held with an iron clamp, roasted on charcoal, or taken back to cut into pieces, wrapped in bread powder, fried, or made into an iron plate squid, the taste was quite good. Together with the garlic chili sauce from China, the taste was indescribable. It tasted better than the best food sold on the street. At least, Jiang Hai liked it very much. While looking for haddock, Jiang Hai grabbed some squid that swam past him. In fact, the squid didn't swim slowly, but Jiang Hai's reaction speed and hand speed were too fast. These squid didn't have time to react at all. They were caught by Jiang Hai and stuffed into the small bag. Not long after, there were more than a dozen squid in the bag. Jiang Hai also stopped and concentrated on searching for haddock. Not to mention, he really found a group of haddock after a long time. Haddock was a kind of Atlantic codfish, but it was the same as the codfish that were generally checked. These haddock were named because of the black line around them, but their main habits were also different from the general codfish. Codfish generally swam not far below the surface of the sea, and the reason why Jiang Hai sank 20 meters to catch them was because haddock was a bottom-dwelling fish. They lived at the bottom of the sea and were very small. The heaviest one was about 3 kilograms, and the longest one was about 70 centimeters. Of course, most of the adult fish were about 2 kilograms of fish, about half a meter long, but this kind of fish's meat was excellent. Generally speaking, after catching them, they were directly chilled and then sold as sashimi. Among the codfish, haddock was the king. After discovering the school of haddock, Jiang Hai swam quickly. Jiang Hai picked up the spear. Before the fish could react, Jiang Hai's right hand had already pierced through them. In an instant, the spear pierced through a large haddock. The haddock began to shake after the spear pierced through it, but it was useless. Jiang Hai walked over and took the fish from the spear. At the same time, he glanced at it. This fish should be half a pile, maybe less than 2 kilograms. How could it be enough to eat? Fortunately, although the nearby fish were frightened just now, they were all stupid and didn't go far. Jiang Hai continued to shoot with the spear. Not long after, 3 or 4 fish were pierced. After all, they were fish from his own fish farm, and it was enough to eat. After loading the fish, Jiang Hai began to look for the last ingredient, shrimp. If there was one thing that Jiang Hai's fish farm had the most besides microorganisms, it would be shrimp. In Jiang Hai's fishing grounds, there are all kinds of prawns. He raises black-spotted prawns, bamboo prawns, Arctic sweet prawns because the water quality is particularly good. There are all kinds of prawns under the sea, mantis prawns, and so on. In Jiang Hai's fishing grounds, there are almost a dozen or 20 kinds of prawns. However, in the eyes of a famous foodie like Jiang Hai, shrimp were actually divided into 3, 6, and 9 grades. Some shrimp are suitable to be eaten, some shrimp are suitable to be boiled, some shrimp are suitable to be made into garlic shrimp, and some shrimp are suitable to be grilled. Now, Jiang Hai was looking for delicious roasted prawns. First of all, the prawns couldn't be too small. If the shrimp is too small, it will be burnt before it is grilled. The shell of the shrimp must be crispy, but the meat inside must not be too old. Therefore, it is inevitable to find some big shrimp. Just as Jiang Hai was looking, a group of red shrimp suddenly appeared in front of him. When he saw these shrimp, Jiang Hai was stunned. At first, he thought it was Arctic sweet shrimp. But when he looked carefully, he found that these shrimp were not Arctic sweet shrimp, but a new kind of shrimp. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be a little confused. After swimming over, he picked up one and looked at it. When he saw it, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be shocked. Because this shrimp is really big. This kind of shrimp is red and very wide. Jiang Hai visually estimated that it is about 5 centimeters long. When it is straight, it is even as long as Jiang Hai's hand. Looking at this kind of shrimp, Jiang Hai was ready to catch some and ask Edward Anderson. He has seen a lot of shrimp, but he has never seen this kind of shrimp before. He is really curious. And this shrimp looks delicious when grilled. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai used both of his hands to grab the 2 prawns and directly stuffed them into his bag. Not long after, he caught 30 to 40 shrimp. Jiang Hai also likes to eat shrimp, so he is ready to catch more. But at this moment, suddenly, a black shadow floated from behind him. Jiang Hai felt the difference in the current and instantly flashed. Just at the moment when he dodged, a huge dark green fish with patterns on its body swept past him. But it just passed by. Although this fish is not small, it is not to the point where it can attack Jiang Hai. Its target is these shrimp. As soon as it lowered its head, a big shrimp was already in its mouth. With a force, it swallowed it. And Jiang Hai looked at this huge fish. He was a little confused. He knows this fish, but it is because he knows it that he is confused. Because this fish should not appear in this place. Is this Sume? Looking at the strange fish in front of him that looks a little like a parrot fish, but has a huge swollen head, he muttered in disbelief. Then he slowly swam to the side of this big fish. For the arrival of Jiang Hai, this fish did not have any excessive reaction. It still swam with the shrimp and bowed its head to eat from time to time. Front and back, left and right, Jiang Hai looked around carefully. He was very sure that this fish is Sume. Sume is also known as rippled lip fish. Jiang Hai has introduced it before. There are also encyclopedias and so on, so Jiang Hai will not take up the word count here. This fish is an endangered species internationally, with the level EN endangered. Among the marine fishes, river fishes are not counted. There are many species of river fishes that are extremely endangered. But among the marine fishes, the only one that is extremely endangered and more precious than this fish is the coelacanth, this kind of living fossil. Jiang Hai used to read some novels about farming. This kind of fish would definitely appear in them. So it was only natural that this kind of fish would appear in Jiang Hai's fishing ground. If it was Jiang Hai from 2 years ago, he would only be happy right now and wouldn't have any other thoughts. But because Jiang Hai had learned a little in the past 2 years, he knew that this kind of fish would definitely not appear here. Because this kind of fish only appears in the Western Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean, that is to say, it is unique to Asia. If you look further, there is no such fish in Europe. How can such a fish appear here? Just when Jiang Hai was puzzled, something that made him even more puzzled happened. Because it seems that this fish did not come by itself. After swimming with this fish for more than 10 minutes, Jiang Hai also swam to the coral reef not far from his shore. Compared to the famous diving coral reef, most of the corals in Jiang Hai's place were reef-colored and gray, so they looked lifeless. But for fish, such corals were no different from those colorful corals. As these shrimp that Jiang Hai did not know crawled into the coral reef, a few humphead wrasse of different sizes emerged from the coral reef. Looking at these fish, Jiang Hai was confused. What the hell is this? Why is there a humphead wrasse here? And it is not only one that is lost, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are a total of 9 humpheads. This can already be regarded as a small community, but why are they here? I don't understand. Chapter 766. Just when Jiang Hai was puzzled, a huge body suddenly swam quickly from a distance. Jiang Hai glanced at it, but the corners of his mouth raised because he knew what it was. When Big Dump's ugly and scarred face appeared in front of Jiang Hai also slowly swam over, and seeing Jiang Hai, Big Dump's eyes flashed with a hint of excitement. Jiang Hai gently swam up, then sat straight on Big Dump's back, grabbed its dorsal fin, and patted its back. Jiang Hai hasn't seen it for a while. Feeling Jiang Hai's movements, Big Dumb was very excited and turned around in place. You're guarding this sea area, you're doing well. Looking at Big Dumb in front of him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh. For Big Dumb, it can be said that it is one of Jiang Hai's closest pets, second only to Little Yellow, Xiao Bai, and Dai Teeth. Since Chocho learned to fly, it has become a bit cold. Every day, it will fly out during the day and only fly back at night. Anyway, it is the national bird of the United States, and no one dares to hit it, so Jiang Hai is happy to be idle. And Big Dumb, it can be said that among Jiang Hai's pets, it has changed the most. When Big Dumb was first caught by Jiang Hai, it was just an ordinary sand tiger shark, but now, you can no longer see a trace of a sand tiger shark on its body. Now, with the constant nourishment of aura and its body's limit of eating, Big Dumb has grown into a giant in the sea. It is the absolute top killer in the sea, and the most famous killer is the great white shark. But generally speaking, the body length of a great white shark is about 4 to 6 meters, and it weighs more than 2 tons. The largest known great white shark is 7.2 meters long and weighs 3,200 kilograms, which is more than 3 tons. This is already the largest predatory fish in the sea. Whale sharks are bigger, but they are harmless. Whales are not fish. But the original overlord of the sea is just a fish in front of Big Dumb at this time. At this time, Big Dumb's body length was more than 10 meters, about 12 or 13 meters. It was already bigger than the great white shark. Even if it was a killer whale, it was still weak. Its body weight was almost 10 tons. Its whole body was black and shiny, and its eyes were full of spirituality. It was a perfect and smart killing machine. Since Jiang Hai discovered that the mountain lion that absorbed his aura mutated, he also paid some attention to the legendary extinct animals. Jiang Hai's situation at this time, he doesn't know what will happen, but he knows that it will not be bad. It was said that the largest shark that had ever existed in the world was the megalodon. Its body length was about 18 to 30 meters and its weight was 60 to 80 tons. It was known as the strongest sea creature in history. It was even stronger than the legendary Pleurodon. Because dinosaurs also need to breathe, they need to show their heads out of the water, but this shark does not need to. Of course, this megalodon did not live in the same era as dinosaurs. Dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. But megalodon lived from 28 million years ago in the gradual epoch to 2.5 million years ago in the Pleistocene epoch. Looking at this big fool, Jiang Hai was also thinking, if one day it really grows up to be like that, then it would really be quite interesting. After patting Big Dumb, Jiang Hai channeled some aura into it. Feeling the aura entering its body, Big Dumb was even happier, but it was not happy for long before it was stopped by Jiang Hai. Then Jiang Hai pointed to the humphead wrasse. Big Dumb looked at Jiang Hai's gesture, thought for a while, and probably understood Jiang Hai's meaning. Jiang Hai's pets are all very intelligent. It probably guessed that Jiang Hai was asking where these fishes came from. After knowing what Jiang Hai meant, Big Dumb also quickly swam towards the outer sea. Big Dumb's speed in the sea was much faster than Jiang Hai. Not long after, they were far away from the shallow sea area. By the time Jiang Hai reacted, they had already swam to the outer sea. Following the direction where Big Dumb swam, Jiang Hai found a huge school of fish in the distance. Why is it a huge school of fish? Because the size of this school of fish is not ordinary. After swimming closer, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile when he saw it. The size of these fish is inevitable, because these huge fish are made up of Big Dumb's wife and the 14 dolphins. Big Dumb's wife also absorbed a lot of aura. At this time, although it is not as big as Big Dumb, its size is not small. It is about 8 meters tall, a pair of small black eyes. After seeing Jiang Hai, it also excitedly turned around. After all, Jiang Hai and Big Dumb husband and wife have fought side by side. The 14 dolphins were also very excited when they saw Jiang Hai, but they did not move much and still maintained their original formation. Seeing their appearance, Jiang Hai felt a little strange at first, but after taking a closer look, he found that they are really powerful. Because at this time, these fishes are driving other fishes into Jiang Hai's fishing ground. What caught Jiang Hai's eyes were 2 very expensive Atlantic blue guns. Those sume were driven here by you? Seeing the Atlantic blue guns running into his fishing ground in a panic, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little funny, so he patted Big Dumb's head and asked him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Big Dumb happily swayed back and forth. Although Big Dumb and the others were sharks, they had eaten a lot of spiritual qi. Naturally, they also had some basic intelligence. As for the dolphins, they were the same. Dolphins are originally smart, and with the aura from Jiang Hai, these dolphins are even smarter. Why is Jiang Hai's fishing resources so developed? First, it is because the seaweed here is very good. The second reason was because Big Dumb and the others had nothing to do, so they would go to the Atlantic Ocean and bring the more valuable fish back to Jiang Hai's manor. And as they got stronger and stronger, the places they went were also getting farther and farther. These Sume actually went astray. They originally lived in the Indian Ocean, but they accidentally swam into the Mediterranean Sea, and then to the Atlantic Ocean. When they wanted to go back, they were stopped by Big Dumb and the others. They were brought to Jiang Hai's fishing ground. These Sume were originally unwilling to come to such a cold place, but when they saw the seaweed, small fishes, and so on, which were rich in aura, they felt that it was okay to live here, so they stayed. Of course, this is all in Jiang Hai's imagination. He doesn't know the specific situation, but he knows that Big Dumb and the others have done a good job. Good job. Patting Big Dumb again, Jiang Hai encouraged him. After playing with Big Dumb for a while, Jiang Hai also rushed back to the shallow sea and returned to the shore. When he came back, Qi Jia and the others were indeed a little worried. Because Jiang Hai has been in the sea for more than an hour, they were also afraid that Jiang Hai had an accident. Now that Jiang Hai came back, they didn't care. After taking out the ingredients in the bags, Jiang Hai also looked at the red shrimp he brought back. Sume was caught by Big Dumb and the others. Jiang Hai knew this. But what's the matter with this shrimp? After handing the things to Qi Jia and the others, Jiang Hai was ready to ask Edward Anderson and the others. Knowing that Jiang Hai has something to do, Qi Jia and the others didn't have to stop Jiang Hai, so they told him to go and come back quickly. At the same time, under the command of Qi, everyone began to pack up the seafood. Jiang Hai quickly came to the dock and stopped Edward Anderson, who was about to go back to sleep. "Boss, what's the matter?" Hearing Jiang Hai stopping him, Edward Anderson couldn't help but ask with some doubts. "I went to the sea to catch shrimp today, and I saw a lot of this kind of shrimp. I haven't seen it before, so I came to ask you." Looking at Edward Anderson's puzzled eyes, Jiang Hai also took out the shrimp he caught and looked at him and asked. "The fish was caught by Big Dumb, this is normal, but it's impossible for Big Dumb to get the shrimp, this is not normal. This is Argentinian red shrimp? Why is there Argentinian red shrimp here?" As soon as he saw the shrimp, Edward Anderson was also stunned, and then said with some uncertainty. Hearing his words, the fishermen who haven't left yet also came over. "It's indeed Argentinian red shrimp, I went to catch it when I was in South America." Looking at the shrimp, Andrew Christian said with a puzzled face. "This kind of shrimp is only produced in the southern hemisphere, near the South Pole. How can there be one here?" "I'm also puzzled, and there are a lot of this kind of shrimp." Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also scratched his head, indicating that he didn't quite understand. "No matter where this shrimp came from, boss, you picked it up again this time, this shrimp is not cheap." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Edward Anderson grabbed the big shrimp and couldn't help but laugh. Argentinian red shrimp is a wild shrimp that grows in the southern waters of Argentina. Because it is close to the South Pole, it is a deep-sea wild shrimp. It is still very popular all over the world. The quality of the shrimp itself is good, and the most important thing is that it is big. So it is very popular in China, and in some restaurants in China, it is even sold by the price. This is not a scam, the shrimp is bigger than a palm, and it is not excessive to sell it by the price. And there are many ways to cook this kind of shrimp, roasting is one of them, and even its meat is delicious and can be made into sashimi. Of course, Jiang Hai doesn't eat that kind of thing, but it doesn't prevent him from knowing that this shrimp is also worth a lot of money. "I saw a lot of shrimp like this at the bottom of the sea, tsk, this is one more place to pay." Looking at the big shrimp in his hand, Jiang Hai smiled, and after giving the rest of the shrimp to them, Jiang Hai returned to the seafood stall with a smile. When he returned, the food for the first round had already been prepared. Chiya was really talented at cooking. The marinated steak, plus the seafood that Jiang Hai brought, was presented perfectly in her hands. When Jiang Hai came back, they were eating the roasted meat. As soon as Jiang Hai came, he picked up a big piece of steak with his hand and stuffed half of it into his mouth. After 2 bites, his eyes narrowed. The beef in his manner is still the best. The taste of the beef is very rich, sweet and juicy. After 1 bite, the taste of the meat juice exploded in the mouth. Although it is roasted, there is no taste at all. To be honest, you can't eat such delicious steak outside. Have you figured out what is going on? Seeing Jiang Hai eating as soon as he came back, Qi Jia, who was roasting fish on the other side, couldn't help but ask Jiang Hai. To be honest, she also felt that the shrimp was a little too big, so big that she didn't dare to eat it. No problem, the shrimp is edible. The species should be called Argentina red shrimp. I don't know where it came from, but there is no problem eating it, and I heard that it tastes good. Hearing Qi Jia's words, Jiang Hai also sat next to her, eating the steak while looking at the red shrimp on the side. He didn't know whether it was delicious or not, but he could try it. Is that so? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Jia curled her lips. Since they have already caught it, then let's try it. He called out to Chia, and Chia handed the matter of roasting the meat to Aphrodite. Then, she came over and took out a thin needle from who knows where. She then grabbed the shrimp that was still moving and began to peel off the shrimp strings. Logically speaking, this kind of shrimp would be frozen when it came out of the water, but Jiang Hai and the others were eating it now, so it didn't matter. After picking out the shrimp line, Chia used a pair of tongs used for roasting squid, just like how she usually roasted shrimp. Then she put it on the fire and roasted it slowly. This had to be roasted slowly over a small fire, so that not too much gravy would be lost, and the shell would also be very crispy. Jiang Hai was a foodie, but he wasn't very good at cooking these things, so he had to listen to Chia. After the shrimp was done, the squid was also cleaned up, and the fresh squid was directly placed on the prepared iron plate. The clean squid was still struggling to move, and at this time, Chia's courage as a chef could be seen. Bang! 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 The squid was cut into several pieces. The teppanyaki squid that they usually ate was the kind that was dead and melted. Probably not many people had eaten this kind of fresh squid before. Jiang Hai also ate it for the first time after coming here, but he had to admit that fresh squid was also very delicious. Of course, this didn't mean eating it alive. Jiang Hai didn't even eat raw squid, let alone eat it alive. After the squid was almost cooked, and the fish were all dead, then she brushed it with chili sauce, sprinkled it with chili powder, xiran, sesame seeds, and some coriander to enhance the taste. Jiang Hai didn't want to eat the spring onions, so he didn't bud them. After the fragrance of these things was also exposed, he directly put the cut squid into a small bowl, and used a toothpick to eat. After the first bite, Jiang Hai's eyes narrowed again. The squid in his manner was still the best. Chapter 767. At night, a gentle breeze blew in the Alabakian mountains. The small village that had been rebuilt was still lifeless. After all, a lot of people died in the last conflict. However, with the help of the American government, the houses here were quickly built. After all, it was basically made of wood, and it wasn't a tall building. It took the construction team 3 days to come in, and they used the local materials to build the house in 2 days. When they left, they even reinforced the walls to prevent people from coming over to cause trouble. They also specially installed a solar-powered satellite phone. Jiang Hai was not here all the time. It can be said that the government only left when everything was almost done. However, although they had a new house to live in and the people who attacked here were wanted, the faces of the people in this tribe were still very gloomy. The men were thinking that they were too cowardly. They didn't even have a chance to fight back when the other party came knocking on their door. especially those who had the ability to compete for the title of the strongest warrior. In their eyes, they were really too shameful. So these days, they were a little unhappy and angry at themselves. At the same time, they also stepped up their training. After Turok's brother, Patton, got Jiang Hai's August, Jiang Hai didn't take it back. It's just a gun. After he goes back, he will get a better one. With this gun, Jiang Hai will leave it to him. With this gun, he will become the leader of these young people. On the other hand, some of the old and weak women were worried about another thing. They didn't ask for revenge or anything. They just wanted to be safe. They were wondering if the tribe was still safe. Maybe in a few days, someone will come to attack the tribe. When they thought of this, they lost their spirit. Looking at the lifeless atmosphere of the entire tribe, not only the patriarch, but also Turok felt a little uncomfortable. However, as a member of the tribe and a woman, she really didn't have any right to speak. But today, after dinner, the chief of the tribe called her to his room. Don't think too much, the old man didn't have any bad intentions. After calling her into the room, the two of them sat far away from each other. This time, I called you here, do you know why? The patriarch looked at Turok for a long time, then slowly said. I don't know. Turok shook her head. She really didn't know why she was called here. This matter, maybe only you can do it. I want to send something to Jiang Hai. Looking at Turok's doubtful eyes, the old man didn't care. After a chuckle, he slowly said to her. Hearing the old man mention Jiang Hai, Turok's eyes lit up. Women worship heroes. Of course, in the current world, women worship more heroes with money. But in this tribe, they still maintain the ancient civilization. Jiang Hai showed his power that night. But in the eyes of many women in the tribe, if Jiang Hai stayed here after that day, as long as he hooked his finger, there would be many women willing to accompany him. Turok was one of them. Moreover, she was the only one who had close contact with Jiang Hai. After all, they slept in the same room that night, although one was on the bed and the other was on the floor. Remember, you must definitely pass this thing to Jiang Hai. Then, you must listen to Jiang Hai's arrangements. Seeing that Turok was a little distracted, the patriarch whispered and called her soul back. Then, he took out an envelope from his pocket. This envelope was specially taken from the police station before he left. Otherwise, this thing would be very precious in the mountains. After passing the envelope to Turok, the patriarch said seriously. Okay, I understand. Hearing the patriarch's words, Turok also said seriously. The next morning, Turok took her luggage and left the tribe. Only two people knew that she was leaving. One was the patriarch, the other was her brother, Patton. After Patton knew that she was going to look for Jiang Hai, he didn't say anything. He just gave her a talisman from when he was young and asked her to bring it to Jiang Hai. Turok left, but no one knew how long she would be gone. After all, it took Jiang Hai 2 days to drive in a straight line. She was now walking from the tribe to Winthrop, which wasn't an easy thing to do. At this time, Jiang Hai also encountered something that wasn't very easy, at least in his opinion, this was the case. These bastards, they are serious. Edward Anderson looked at the things displayed on the radar and said to Jiang Hai in a deep voice. Jiang Hai was also standing in the small house at the dock, frowning as he looked at the red dots in front of him. Each red dot represented a ship. His fish farm was invaded. The incident started 3 days ago. Everyone knew that there were fish in Jiang Hai's manor. The fish in Jiang Hai's manor were very valuable. This was something that everyone in Boston knew very well. Money moved people's hearts. It was such a simple question. Jiang Hai had a lot of influence in the upper echelons of Massachusetts, and he also had influence in Winthrop. Therefore, whether it was high-ranking politicians or residents of Winthrop, they didn't dare to provoke Jiang Hai. But Boston was so large that the fishermen of Revere, Chelsea, Avery, Somerville, Cambridge, Watertown, Newton, Brickland, Needham, Canton, Milton, Dedham, and Quincy did not object to it, though the fishermen of Revere, Chelsea, Avery, Somerville, Cambridge, Watertown, Newton, Brickland, Needham, Canton, Milton, Dedham, Quincy did. Especially after Jiang Hai expanded his fish farm again. In their view, Jiang Hai's fish farm was very big and there were fish in it. In their view, not all property was sacred and couldn't be violated, especially when it came to fish. Wuxia's textbooks taught them that Americans had a robber's spirit in their bones. However, after Jiang Hai came here, he found that this sentence was actually not so true. Not only did Americans have a robber's spirit in their bones, but in fact, everyone had it. Therefore, some people thought about stealing fish. However, it was not possible during the day. Marlon Rupert and Bell Lester's helicopters would always patrol the fish farm. If there was a problem, they would directly fly over. They didn't have to do anything. They just had to remember the ship number and report it to the Coast Guard. Now that the Coast Guard's salary was completely dependent on Jiang Hai, they naturally wouldn't let go of these ships easily. Fines from the higher-ups were inevitable. Therefore, it could be said that the losses outweighed the gains. However, once people went astray, it was really difficult to come back. Those who were punished did not become chickens in the eyes of others. Instead, they were thinking of ways to steal fish without being discovered. Some people went at night, but it was very dangerous at night. It was easy to bump into Jiang Hai's fishing boats. At that time, they would naturally be in trouble. Therefore, some people were prepared to play dirty. They prepared to drive a small boat to steal fish at night. The boat was very small and would not be shown on the radar. Moreover, Jiang Hai's fish was very expensive. A few nets were enough for them to spend. This made many people think about it. In the end, the two Chelsea brothers were the first to carry out this plan. It was 3 days ago. These two men drove a small boat to Jiang Hai's waters and began to catch fish in the dark. The people did not discover them, but the fish did. Before they could catch a second fish, a big fool appeared and knocked their boat into the water. The people fell into the water and were naturally eaten. The next day, when Jiang Hai and his men were patrolling, they found the boat and nothing else. After reporting it to the Coast Guard said that the boat was knocked over by a big fish. The people should have been killed. This happened in Jiang Hai's waters. Jiang Hai could not get away with it. According to the original statement, Jiang Hai might have to pay about 100,000 yuan. After all, the two men died in his territory. Jiang Hai was very unwilling to pay more than 20,000 yuan. You came to my territory to steal fish and drowned, and you still want me to pay? Shameless bastard. However, the matter here was not settled yet. The people from the Fishery Association came over to make trouble. According to them, it was the fish that killed the brothers. The brothers were from the Fisheries Association, so they had to come here to punish the murderer. It was like a tiger eating a man in the park. Although the man deserved it, the tiger had to be beaten to death. But fish were different from people. Fish were in the sea. How could you determine which fish killed them? According to them, they were planning to capture all of the big fishes and kill them. Of course, this was what they said. In fact, they just wanted to catch fish. Who knew if they put the fish in the boat? And most importantly, even if Jiang Hai sent people to each boat to watch them and not let them put the fish in the boat, after the fish were squeezed in the net, they would die on the boat. Even if they fell back into the sea, Jiang Hai would suffer a huge loss. The most important thing was that Jiang Hai was indeed a little guilty because he had big fish. And these people came under the banner of not being punished by the law. Such a banner was the same everywhere. After 2 days of negotiation, Jiang Hai did not give up an inch of land. Today, these people were going to fight. The densely packed fishing boats came directly to Jiang Hai's fishing ground. They planned to empty Jiang Hai's fishing ground in one go. Damn, Mayor Cartwright, don't you have anything to say? Looking at these fishing boats rushing over, Jiang Hai gritted his teeth and said to Tommy Charles beside him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Tommy Charles's eyes were shining with hatred. Mayor Cartwright went to ask. They said that this is a civil dispute. Before there is bloodshed, the police are not suitable to intervene, but the Constitution of the United States stipulates that everyone's property is sacred and inviolable. If you fight back, it is in accordance with the Constitution. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Tommy, Charles said helplessly. There was really no way to say this. Damn, these damn politicians. Jiang Hai understood the words of these people as soon as he heard it. They mean that this is Jiang Hai's territory, so he can fight with them. If you fight with them, they will suffer in silence. They will not be counted as you taking the initiative to attack, so there will be no trouble. It looks good, but one must know that Jiang Hai's opponent was not 1 or 2 ships, but dozens of ships. On each of these boats, there are more than a dozen people, adding together, there are hundreds of people. Will Jiang Hai believe that they don't bring weapons on board? If he fires at them, won't they shoot at him? Jiang Hai only has one helicopter against dozens of boats. It's really amazing that they can say that. It's really unreliable, we can only rely on ourselves. Hearing that there is no help from Mayor Cartwright, Edward Anderson can't help but sigh. Now they have no other way. Otherwise, they can only watch these people take advantage of them, or they can only fight with these people, it's that simple. Damn it. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai said in a deep voice. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, the fishermen around him stood up. Cowboys and fishermen are not good-tempered. For them, this job in Jiang Hai's manner is excellent. They earn a lot, eat well, live well, and are not too busy. The most important thing is that they have a lot of hope. Now that someone has come to make trouble, they are not to be trifled with. With Jiang Hai's order, Bell Lester directly flew the helicopter over. Jiang Hai and the others immediately got on 2 fishing boats and rushed over. The 2 fishing boats were extremely fast. But when they arrived at the border, Jiang Hai found that he was still too late. He didn't block all of them outside. Now, the leading fishing boats have already put down their nets, ready to catch the fish directly. Boss, what should we do? Seeing that these boats completely ignored Jiang Hai's boat and were ready to catch the fish, Edward Anderson's face was quite ugly. He walked to Jiang Hai's side and whispered to him. Knock over these mother-f*** curs. Looking at these boats outside, Jiang Hai's eyes narrowed. After comparing the tonnage of the boats, he growled with a gloomy face. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Edward Anderson's eyes couldn't help but light up. He showed his big white teeth, then gave a thumbs up to Jiang Hai, then directly commanded the 2 fishing boats to crash into the fleet in front of them. These boats clearly didn't think that Jiang Hai would be so strong. 2 against dozens, he actually dares to crash into the boats directly. Does he want to die? But no matter what they think, what they have to do now is to move immediately. Unfortunately, they still have nets, and Jiang Hai's boat is much faster and more powerful than them. They simply didn't give the fishing boats in front of them any chance. The engines of the 2 boats roared as they rushed towards the 2 boats closest to them. The shadows of the 2 boats grew bigger and bigger in the eyes of the crew members of the 2 boats. Chapter 768. When Jiang Hai bought the boat, he was afraid that the boat would not be sturdy in the sea. This could be seen when he looked back. Jiang Hai was greedy, lecherous, and afraid of death. Of course, his fear of death was actually at the forefront. There was no one who was not afraid of death, especially people like Jiang Hai. If he wanted money, he had money. If he wanted women, he had women. There was nothing to worry about. Although this kind of life was very unambitious, what was the point of pursuing a beautiful life here? Therefore, he did not care about being a salted fish. However, he was very clear about one thing. He had not had enough of this kind of life. Although he did not have such a life when he was building the boat 2 years ago, at least his life back then was quite good. He built his offshore fishing boat according to the standards of ocean-going fishing boats. The sturdiness, degree, and size were indeed far from what these fishermen's boats could compare to. With Jiang Hai's order, the two fishing boats collided with the boat in front of them that was preparing to collect the net. Clang! Clang! When the two boats collided, they almost instantly knocked the opposite boat back and directly lost control. The people on the other side did not expect that Jiang Hai would actually collide with them. He did not give them a chance at all. Immediately, a few fishermen were hit and fell into the sea. Fortunately, which sailor did not know how to swim? After falling into the sea, they swam far away in the blink of an eye. They were not prepared to face Jiang Hai's boat head-on in the water. On Jiang Hai's side, because they were the aggressors, they held on tightly. This collision caused a lot of shaking, but nothing happened. After stabilizing the boat, Jiang Hai and the others also looked at the other boats. Let's teach these guys a lesson. While they were checking the other boats, those fishing boats were also frightened. The small fishing boats that originally put down the net were trying hard to retrieve the fishing net at this time. They did not want to be like the other two boats. If they were hit like this, the owners of the other boats would probably be heartbroken. Many fishing boats that were close to the two boats also saw the miserable state of the two boats. A large part of the bow was caved in from the collision. Why did a ship have a bow? It was to look like one. This had a lot to do with dynamics. Now that there was such a large dent, there was no way to directly sail out to sea because it would be very dangerous. No one could predict the outcome of such a huge wave. As for the money, they didn't know if Jiang Hai would give it to them. If Jiang Hai didn't give them any money and they had to pay for the repairs themselves, they wouldn't be able to fix it without more than $10,000. That would be a month's work for nothing. If Jiang Hai knew what they were thinking, he would chuckle. They are really shameless. They invaded his waters, forcibly stole his fish, and now they want him to compensate them for repairing their ships. Although Jiang Hai has a lot of money, this money belongs to Jiang Hai. Why should he give it to others? In China, there were some people like this who specialized in moral kidnapping. They stood at the top and scolded people every day. If there was a natural disaster, they would scold those rich people and say that they should donate as much as they wanted. If they didn't donate, they would be letting their conscience down. They would be trash, scum, and sinners of the nation. In the beginning, Jiang Hai was just watching for fun. But now, he had entered this level. At this time, he had to say, why should he? He was willing to donate as much as he wanted. If he didn't donate, it would still be his money. Why should others decide how to spend his money? Like now, perhaps some people will say that it's just some fish. Jiang Hai's beef makes a lot of money every year. Opening up some waters to these fishermen, everyone can earn money together. Isn't that a good thing? Some people would also say that Jiang Hai should go back to China and announce the use of spiritual energy. Then, Wuxia would take off and become the new overlord of the world. But it was still the same question. Why should he? Every single cent of Jiang Hai's money belonged to Jiang Hai. How much he wanted to donate and who he wanted to donate to was his freedom. He was willing to do so. These people wanted to impose their will on him. This was completely impossible. After coming to Winthrop, someone had done this once. It was when Winthrop was recruiting factories. At that time, Jiang Hai let the people of Winthrop know that he was not the people's servant. He was the people's boss. It was useless to talk about the interests of the masses with him because he could flip the table and quit at any time. He didn't care what was on the table. If there was a hot pot, he would flip it over without hesitation. He was so hot-tempered. It was obvious that these people had not figured out Jiang Hai's pulse yet. Seeing these fishing boats scatter in panic, Jiang Hai couldn't help but sneer. Then, he looked at the largest fishing boat. Hit that guy. Jiang Hai had seen this fishing boat before. He had seen it when he went to Boston to sell fish. Edward Anderson had told him that this fishing boat belonged to the president of Boston's Fishing Association. This time, he was the one who had started it. Jiang Hai wouldn't let him get away with it. Jiang Hai pointed his finger and gave the order to the two boats. After receiving Jiang Hai's order, the two boats quickly collided with the big boat that had not had time to completely retract the net. Seeing Jiang Hai and the others aggressively colliding with them, the sailors on the boat were honestly a little confused. Some people subconsciously wanted to run to the stern of the boat. On the uppermost deck, the president of the fishing association was standing there with his son. In fact, these people had been eyeing Jiang Hai's fish farm for a long time. But because Jiang Hai was a person who lived in seclusion compared to ordinary rich people, they couldn't find any fault with him. In addition, Jiang Hai himself had not made any profit from this fish farm in the past 2 years. If they couldn't see the fish farm being sold for money, they could ignore Jiang Hai's fish farm. But this year, when it was sold for money, these people couldn't sit still. People in Wuxia would do whatever they saw was valuable. For example, when they saw that Jiang Hai was making money by raising fish, they would buy a piece of water and raise fish themselves to make money. But Americans were different. They didn't have the habit of raising fish. In their opinion, those who raised fish in a piece of land were all fools. Because fish were mobile, especially if the fish inside were valuable, it would be like touching their own cake. So for them, stealing fish was inevitable. But they didn't expect Jiang Hai to have such a good relationship with the Coast Guard. Stealing fish once could earn a few $1,000s, but when they went ashore, they would be fined 3 times the amount, and it would be rounded up. For example, if they stole Jiang Hai's fish, which was worth $10,100, they would be fined $11,000. The fine would be 3 times the amount, which was $33,000. Such a fine was too much for them to bear. That was why some people took the risk out of desperation. Finally, they got the chance. 2 guys died in Jiang Hai's fish farm. What else could they say? Hunting down the murderer, this was also the reason why they invaded Jiang Hai's fishing grounds. They themselves didn't believe this reason, but it was just a slogan, a fuse. After the police heard their reason, the police didn't appear. After all, people died. In a country like the United States, where human rights were high, people died. It was definitely the most important thing. It could easily escalate to the level of human rights. These people wanted Jiang Hai to hand over the murderer, but Jiang Hai refused, so they came to catch the murderer themselves. This was inevitable. Although this was a farce, the police couldn't get involved. But the police also gave Jiang Hai authorization. Like now, these fishermen would definitely be at a disadvantage. These sons of B*cheese, I'll just kill them. Looking at the 2 fishing boats, the chairman's son on the fishing boat couldn't help but curse. Then, he picked up a double-barreled shotgun and prepared to shoot. But seeing his son's appearance, the chairman pressed his hand down. Guns are absolutely not allowed. Looking at his son, the chairman said calmly. Why? In my opinion, this sea belongs to all of humanity. Anyone who wants to come and fish is fine. These fellows have taken over this sea and even dared to crash into our ship. Hugging them to death is a light punishment. Hearing his father's words, his son couldn't help but roar furiously. Stopping people from making money is like killing their parents, especially when they learn that Jiang Hai's fish may be worth billions. This hatred is almost enough to kill their whole family, so it's no wonder this guy was so impulsive. Look at the person in the helicopter. That person retired from the Triangle State Army. He is now a cowboy and Jiang Hai's bodyguard here. Why didn't he move from the helicopter? That's because he was waiting. Waiting for us to shoot first, then he can shoot. Are you going to compete with someone from the Triangle State to see who's better at shooting? Hearing his son's words, the chairman said very plainly. Although he doesn't understand the Wuxia culture, he still understands the principle of knowing the enemy and knowing oneself. He knows that he can play rough with Jiang Hai in the rules, but he can't play dirty, because Jiang Hai's power is not something he can compare with. He is not stupid. He heard the news that those punks in B City attacked Jiang Hai's manor. So many people were killed by Jiang Hai. They are not professionals, so it's better for them not to come and make a fool of themselves. Therefore, before coming here, he clearly forbade Jiang Hai to fire first. Otherwise, they can't fire their weapons. If they shoot, then it's really easy to blow things up to the point of wiping out their reason. Damn it, then we just watch them hit us? Hearing his father's words, the man couldn't help but say angrily. How is that possible? Hearing his son's words, the chairman couldn't help but smile. As he waved his hand, several sailors pushed out 2 small cars in an instant. There was a belt on the small cars, a huge nozzle, and a slender pipe connected to the boat. Seeing this thing, many people on the fisherman's side couldn't help but brighten up. Water cannon. Dad, great move. Seeing these 2 things, his son laughed for the first time, and then without saying a word, he went over and picked one first. Looking at Jiang Hai's 2 boats getting closer and closer, he also smiled evilly and pointed the nozzle at them. Start. With the chairman's order, the 2 nozzles were turned on at the first time, and then a huge stream of water gushed out from these 2 nozzles in an instant. When looking at these 2 water jets, Jiang Hai was also shocked. High-pressure water gun? No, it's a high-pressure water cannon. Looking at the water jets rushing over like a water dragon, Jiang Hai couldn't help but say with a dumbfounded expression. But hearing his words, Edward Anderson narrowed his eyes and said helplessly. At the same time, his hand was also quickly turning the steering wheel, preparing to avoid the impact of the water gun, but unfortunately, this was impossible. Peng peng. 2 sounds were heard as 2 streams of water rushed towards the bow of Jiang Hai's ship. The huge impact force, although it was not like the collision of 2 boats, will not break the bow, but the huge impact force still made the bow a little bit off course. The original course of the collision with the big boat changed in an instant. It was impossible to force it back, because the closer it was, the greater the power of the water jets, as if there was a giant holding a stick and forcibly pushing Jiang Hai's boat away. Seeing this situation, Edward Anderson directly turned the steering wheel and drove half a circle to the back. Marin Rupert, who was driving the boat on the other side, did the same. They knew that with these 2 high-pressure water cannons, they couldn't do anything. Haha, who told you to be arrogant? Come and hit us, UF King Hua Xia. This is the United States, not a place where you can be arrogant. We will take over your territory. Seeing Jiang Hai in front of him driving half a circle to the back, the son who turned off the valve only after the water cannons couldn't hit Jiang Hai couldn't help but stand on the bow and shout loudly. Hearing his shout, the small fishing boats on the other side also laughed. Hearing their laughter, Jiang Hai's complexion became quite bad. He had seen this thing on TV before. Many countries would use this weapon to protect disputed territorial waters. Not only would it not hurt people, it was also very deterrent, and it was not strong enough to cause friction. But Jiang Hai didn't expect that these guys would use this thing to deal with him. Damn it, damn it, damn it, I want to get this thing too, kill them. Looking at the 2 high-pressure water cannons in front of him, Jiang Hai's face was as ugly as it could be. It was the first time he was bullied like this in front of his home. Shameless. Dalton Green of the Ocean Temple should have this thing. I can't take this lying down. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Edward Anderson took a deep breath. To be honest, it wasn't easy to make this old man so angry. However, these guys had succeeded in arousing Edward Anderson's hatred. Looking at the flaunting fishing boats in front of them, their faces were quite ugly. After seeing Jiang Hai's ship being repelled, Edward Anderson's face turned ugly. Those greedy fishing boats still wanted to catch fish, but at this time, 2 Coast Guard helicopters came from nowhere. Chapter 769. Jiang Hai, we will give you 3 more days to think about it. If you don't hand over the murderer, then we will catch him ourselves. Seeing the Coast Guard coming, these fishermen also knew that today may be the end of the day. The president over there came over, and after speaking through the radio, he waved his hand and left with his fishing boats one after another. Looking at the backs of these boats leaving, Jiang Hai was really angry. He hasn't been angered like this for a long time. Boss, what should we do now? Under the Coast Guard's policy of smoothing things over, today's matter was finally left unsettled. But it was obvious that the other party had finally found an opportunity to invade Jiang Hai's fishing grounds. They would not let Jiang Hai off so easily. But how to deal with these people? Jiang Hai does have some headaches. These people can't be beaten, and it is impossible to play dirty. But this stubbornness, when would it end? When he thought of this, Jiang Hai felt a headache. What should I do? Fight? After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai gritted his teeth. Since it is now impossible to stop halfway, then he has nothing to say, just one word: fight. He has never been a good person, so now that others are bullying him, there is absolutely no reason for him to be afraid. Uncle Ai Hua, didn't you just say that there are water cannons in the sea temple? But if they wanted to do it, they had to have weapons. It was impossible to directly take out a gun, but as the man said, before the other party opened fire, they absolutely could not open fire. Whoever opened fire first would be the one to blame. This point, whether it was the mayor or the police, they had already told Jiang Hai. If they can't shoot, then the choice of weapons is much less. Jiang Hai thought about it and decided to use water cannons. No problem, let's go in the afternoon. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Edward Anderson said loudly. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai temporarily calmed down his anger. Everything will wait until we go to the sea temple in the afternoon. Thinking of this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but rub his temples. Troublesome. How troublesome. Jiang Hai hated trouble the most. After driving the boat back to the dock, Jiang Hai and the others were not idle at noon. After discussing together, they had lunch. In the afternoon, Jiang Hai and Edward Anderson drove directly to the Boston dock. When they arrived at the Ocean Temple, it was 2:00 in the afternoon and the workers had just finished their lunch break. Therefore, the inside of the factory was a bit messy. But after Jiang Hai and the others walked in, Jiang Hai saw Dalton Green wearing a helmet. He was the boss of the Ocean Temple. At this time, he was directing the workers to install a ship. Hey, Dalton. Looking at Dalton Green, Edward Anderson couldn't help but shout. Hearing Edward Anderson's words, Dalton Green also turned his head and glanced at him. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes at first, then he smiled as if he knew that Jiang Hai and the others were coming. He walked over with a smile. Hey, man, I knew you were almost here. Looking at Edward Anderson, Dalton Green shook hands with Jiang Hai first because he knew that he was the one who spent the money. Then he said to Edward Anderson, I think you should know about it. After all, this matter is now spreading everywhere. Hearing his words, Edward Anderson smiled and said somewhat speechlessly. Although they didn't say it explicitly, Jiang Hai knew what they were talking about. The conflict between him and the fishermen was actually not a secret in Boston. After all, the fishermen had to portray themselves as righteous, otherwise, they would have no reason to attack, so these guys had been creating a lot of momentum in Boston these days. Dalton Green naturally knew that these people were looking for trouble. When the time comes, whether Jiang Hai wants to get weapons or ships, his place is the best choice, so he was not surprised by Jiang Hai's arrival. I really can't hide anything from you. The number of those guys is too large, and they even got high-pressure water cannons. We suffered a lot today. This time I asked you to come here mainly to buy some high-pressure water cannons and then beat them back. Hearing Dalton Green's words, Edward Anderson nodded with a wry smile, and then said with a face full of hatred. These guys are like a pack of wolves. If you show a little weakness in front of them, they will skin you, break your bones, and swallow you whole. Therefore, whether it is Jiang Hai or Edward Anderson, they are determined to protect the fishery. Now they came to Dalton Green to look for weapons. Come with me. Hearing Edward Anderson's words, Dalton Green smiled, and then took them to the depths of the factory. Turning around, they went to the harbor where the factory was preparing to launch the ships. It was a huge and empty place. After coming here, Jiang Hai looked at Dalton Green with some doubts. What are we doing here? Are there water cannons here? Looking at the empty place, Jiang Hai asked with some doubts. Ho ho, Mr. Jiang, I know at first sight that you have not bought any weapons. When you buy weapons, you should try them first to see if they are useful, right? This is the test site. Come on, bring them here. After speaking to the people around him, a lot of workers came over with a lot of things. The first thing that Jiang Hai saw was a high-pressure water cannon about the same size as the one used by the fire brigade. Under Dalton Green's signal, the workers opened the valve in an instant, and a water dragon sprayed out from the water cannon. It sprayed for about 20 meters before gradually falling down, drawing a rainbow in the sky. This is the most basic high-pressure direct current water cannon. Its serial number is QZ355, and its caliber is 50 millimeters. It can spray 5 liters of water per second, and its range is at least 25 meters. Generally, firefighters use this kind of water cannon. When suppressing riots in prison, they also use it. It's good quality, but it's not good for ships. Its advantage is that it's light and simple. Although it's not good for ships, it's not a problem for people. You can directly spray the people on the plate armor into the sea with this water cannon. Looking at the water, Dalton Green said with a smile. When Jiang Hai first saw such a thin pipe, he actually didn't take it seriously. But after hearing Dalton Green's words, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Yes, this thing can't hit ships, but it can hit people. Thinking of the people standing on the deck of the ship today, Zhang Tai thought. Jiang Hai touched his chin. Maybe it's a good idea. I can hit people while shooting water cannons. It's a good choice. Most importantly, this thing can't hit big ships, but it seems to be good for small ships. This is a larger size than the previous one. It's 7.5 millimeters, with a diameter of 65 millimeters. It can spray 28 meters away, and the water output is 7.5 L. It's a bit weak for ordinary people to hold, so we need several people to hold it. Soon after Dalton Green finished his words, another group of people walked over with a water gun. However, this one was obviously bigger than the previous one. After spraying out the water, it looked more powerful than the previous one. If it could hit people, TSK. No, is there a bigger one? The one they used to hit our ship today was at least 80 millimeters. When Jiang Hai expressed his interest in this weapon, Edward Anderson shook his head and said to Dalton Green, 80 millimeters? There's an 80 millimeters model, but there's an 82 millimeters model. Take a look. Hearing Edward Anderson's words, Dalton Green waved his hand again, and several workers came up with something like a small cart. At the sight of this thing, Jiang Hai knew that it was the water cannon used by those people today. It's this model. This thing can knock our ship askew. Looking at this water cannon, Jiang Hai spoke first. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Dalton Green couldn't help but smile. It seems that they came prepared. Your 2 ships are built according to the specifications of going out to sea. Only this kind of water cannon can affect your ship. The previous 2 can at most make you feel a little uncomfortable. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Dalton Green said with a smile. Is there anything more powerful? I want to let them know the consequences of messing with me. Hearing Dalton Green's words, Jiang Hai also changed his expression, and then said seriously. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Dalton Green's eyes lit up. Your needs are the meaning of our existence. If you're interested, you can take a look at this. This should be the largest water cannon on the market. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Dalton Green said with a smile, and then motioned his workers to push that thing out. As another small cart appeared, Jiang Hai's eyes lit up. This was because the water cannon that appeared in front of him was much larger than the previous one. I won't give you any empty words. There are 100 millimeters above 82 millimeters. This is 120 millimeters, you can try it. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Dalton Green said with a smile. Following his order, his workers also opened the water valve, and in an instant, a water dragon rushed out of the valve. What a joke. Jiang Hai looked at the water dragon and saw that it was about 60 meters away. The water dragon was very thick and strong. Looking at the water dragon, Jiang Hai's eyes couldn't help but shine. This was exactly what he wanted. I want this. Order 4 for me. He waved his hand and directly ordered 4 water cannons without asking for the price. But fortunately, Edward Anderson stopped him first and shook his head at him. He still had to ask first before making a decision. Dalton, we're old friends. Can this thing be used on the ship? It should be known that such a high-pressure water cannon has a great impact and recoil. It also depends on the ship. He didn't want his fishing boat to be damaged. No problem. Don't talk about 4 water cannons on your fishing boat, even 10 water cannons won't be a problem. But you can't just install 1 water cannon on one side. If you install 2 water cannons on each side, there won't be a problem. You can install them anywhere. Hearing Edward Anderson's words, Dalton Green on the other side couldn't help but laugh and say. Also, if this water cannons shoot out, won't it directly capsize the other party's boat? You know, I don't want to get involved in a murder lawsuit. If the boat sinks or capsizes in the sea, the people on the boat are almost dead. Why is that? Because when the boat sinks or capsizes, the air in the cabin will be expelled by the seawater, and a large amount of seawater will pour in, forming a whirlpool. After all, people's swimming speed is not fast. Once they are entangled by the whirlpool, they will be directly pulled into the sea. How long can a person not breathe? Therefore, if they are pulled into the sea, they will be dead. The conflict between Jiang Hai and the others here is a conflict, but Edward Anderson knows very well that there must be no more deaths. Of course, if they go to Jiang Hai's territory to commit suicide, it won't count. But if there are more deaths in such a conflict, it will be troublesome. 120 water cannons can deal with medium-sized fishing boats and above, but small fishing boats can't. They will be easily overturned. But you can install 82 water cannons, 75 water cannons, 65 water cannons, or even 50 water cannons. These are enough to deal with those small fishing boats. Hearing Edward Anderson's words, Dalton Green didn't lie. He also knows that he is the one who sold these water cannons. If there really is a murder case, he can't escape responsibility. So now he is telling the truth. Hearing his words, Edward Anderson looked at Jiang Hai. It's up to him to decide. 4 water cannons, 4 water cannons, and 4 water cannons, I want them now. Jiang Hai doesn't want to get involved in a murder case, so after thinking for a while, he said to Dalton Green in front of him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Dalton Green also smiled. This time the business is done. He immediately ordered his workers to take these water cannons from the warehouse for Jiang Hai. Seeing that Jiang Hai has made up his mind, Edward Anderson didn't say anything. He just checked the water cannons one by one. After confirming that there is no problem with them, Jiang Hai paid the money without hesitation. The price of these water cannons is not cheap, especially the 4 water cannons of 120 water cannons. The total price is comparable to the price of a fishing boat of Jiang Hai's level. But Jiang Hai doesn't feel distressed at all. First, because he doesn't lack money. Second, because he is counting on these water cannons to take revenge. Chapter 770. Boss is back. Did you get the things back? Looking at Jiang Hai and Edward Anderson who drove back, Tommy Charles and others who were still at the dock ran out. Because of the fishermen's trouble these days, Jiang Hai and the others didn't go fishing at night. Of course, before that, they made a lot of fishing, at least to ensure that the cooperative restaurants and Sam's Club in Prawalton had something to sell, but there was not so much variety. So, including Edward Anderson and the others, these people didn't go fishing at night. If they don't fish, there is no income. Although the salary is still as usual, what they really want is the bonus. Got it back, let's do it together. Hearing Tommy Charles's words, Jiang Hai also nodded. Hearing his words, Tommy Charles and the others ran over and looked at the high-pressure water cannons behind Jiang Hai's car. Their faces showed a grim look. The fisherman's character is not very good. These guys dare to provoke them, so they will certainly not let these guys have a good time. But after taking down these water cannons, they found that there were some steel plates under the water cannons, and they looked very thick, not even inferior to the ones used on the boat. These things are. Seeing these steel plates, Eleanor Cece asked with some doubts. He really didn't know. These are used for defense. Thanks to Edward Anderson's reminder, if we want a fire outside, the best way is to set up an armed turret outside. Hearing these people's words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh, then looked at Edward Anderson and recalled the request he made when Jiang Hai was about to pay. Hey, that's better, come on, let's arm these 2 fishing boats. Looking at these steel plates, Bill Zaphonia, who had just arrived, laughed first, then shouted loudly. Hearing his words, everyone also shouted loudly. Then everyone went to the dock and took a blowtorch, saw blades, and a series of other things. They began to concentrate on transforming their boat. Jiang Hai was not very clear about this, but fortunately, these people were familiar with it. They knew how to increase their defense so that they wouldn't be hit by their opponents when they attacked. In addition, they didn't have to limit their vision. That night, the lights on the pier were only extinguished after 10 p.m. Jiang Hai dragged his tired body back home slowly. When he walked into the villa, he saw that the girls had specially saved dinner for him. He smiled. Although the girls hadn't said anything these days, Jiang Hai felt that they were still quite worried about him. However, some things couldn't be resolved just by taking a step back. At least, Jiang Hai didn't think so. After heating up the dishes, Jiang Hai ate a little and threw the remaining bowls and chopsticks into the dishwasher. Then he returned to his room. When he walked into his room, he found that Chi-Jia, Chia, Shira, and Ashilia, who were in charge of taking care of him tonight, were already asleep on the bed. Jiang Hai tiptoed into the bathroom and took a simple shower. The weather outside was very hot today. Coupled with the sea breeze, the sun, and the heat from the blowtorch, Jiang Hai had sweated a lot. When the wind dried his sweat, Jiang Hai himself felt that there was a strange smell on his body. So he more or less had to take a shower. Jiang Hai turned on the tap and began to wash. However, when he was about to apply shampoo to his hair, he suddenly saw Chi-Jia standing in front of the bathroom door. Hey! Why are you up? Did I wake you up? Looking at Chi-Jia, who was standing there naked with a silk pajamas on her coat, Jiang Hai asked embarrassedly. No, I wasn't asleep. As soon as you came back, I heard your voice. Chi-Jia shook her head and looked at Jiang Hai and said indifferently. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also smiled helplessly. He quickly applied the shower gel and then took a shower. In fact, he really wanted to apologize to Chi-Jia. It was indeed his fault for making her so worried. Chi-Jia sighed and whispered to Jiang Hai, when men do things outside, women shouldn't talk too much. But you also know how important your position in this Zhuangxian is. So, I'll have to trouble you to consider the women around you before making any decisions. Hearing Jiang Hai stop talking, Chi-Jia sighed and whispered to Jiang Hai. I really made you worry. Hearing this, Jiang Hai also felt warm in his heart. He quickly washed off the foam on his body and head. Jiang Hai wiped his hair and walked in front of Chi-Jia. You know that you will make us worry, so you should pay more attention, okay? Looking at Jiang Hai, Chi-Jia looked at him with some reproach. Then, she was about to turn around and leave, but the moment she turned around, Jiang Hai pulled her body back. Under her surprised gaze, Jiang Hai lowered his head and kissed her deeply on the lips. Feeling Jiang Hai's movements, Chi-Jia almost instantly became soft. What she couldn't stand the most was Jiang Hai's overbearingness. Feeling the person in his arms instantly become as soft as a puddle of mud, Jiang Hai carried her out of the bathroom. But the remaining consciousness made Chi-Jia press the bathroom door that Jiang Hai was about to open. Don't disturb them. Hearing Chi-Jia's words, Jiang Hai froze for a moment, then nodded his head and launched an attack. In response to Jiang Hai's attack, Chi-Jia snorted and began to fight back. War is so inexplicable, it's that simple. After an hour, the war ended. Jiang Hai also returned to the bed with Qi Jie, who had been washed again. After lying on the bed, Qi Jie turned around and went to sleep with Sheila beside her. She knew that Jiang Hai had the habit of hugging Qi to sleep, so she didn't care about it. Looking at Qi Jie's movements, Jiang Hai was somewhat embarrassed, but he was indeed used to hugging Qi, so he turned his head and hugged Qi to sleep. The night was silent. After waking up the next morning, Jiang Hai left again. Anyway, he had nothing to do. Naturally, he also had to help with the installation of the turrets. Although he was only going to be an assistant, after all, welding things also required skill and skill. In the United States, most of the owners of manors, ranches, and fish farms were very good at these things. This was because it was troublesome and expensive to ask for manual service in the United States. Instead of paying those people, they would rather do their own research. So from a young age, they spent their time repairing and maintaining things. When they grew up, they had accumulated enough experience. Although they couldn't be compared with those professionals, if they didn't care about the aesthetics and only cared about the quality, it was not a problem. Just like now, on the second night, several turrets had been welded. These turrets were square grids, and the size of the grids were different. Of course, the strength of the water guns was also different. Jiang Hai made his boat into a water hedgehog. Two 120mm cannons were placed at the bow, two 82mm cannons were placed on both sides of the boat, and the last two 65mm cannons were not welded, so they could be fired at any time. The 8 frames welded on the 2 boats could be said to be extremely sturdy. Although it was ugly and there were welded spots everywhere, it was quite sturdy. Jiang Hai and the others had done tests. Not to mention the 82mm cannons, even the 120mm cannons couldn't leave any marks on the iron plate. The only thing that could be done was that the boat would be knocked back and forth, that was all. In this regard, Jiang Hai was quite satisfied. There were a total of 4 openings for the 2 120mm water cannons. 3 of them were inlaid with bulletproof glass, which was used to observe the opposite side. There was a long oval water outlet about 30 centimeters long at the muzzle, which was used to investigate the angle. After testing, it could be fired to a position of about 45 degrees, which was enough. When the 2 water cannons opened at the same time, it would not give the other side any chance, and there were no blind spots. Jiang Hai had tried the power of the water cannons. Wooden boats were directly smashed into pieces, and sawdust flew everywhere. Ordinary small boats and small fishing boats would be overturned immediately. Only medium-sized fishing boats could withstand it, but they would also be shaken badly. It was like encountering a storm on the sea, which was quite terrifying. The 82mm cannons were like encountering a storm when dealing with ordinary small fishing boats. For such an effect, Jiang Hai was quite happy. Now, it was time to see if the other side would come. If they didn't come, Jiang Hai and the others would just treat it as a game. If they came, Jiang Hai would teach them how to behave. Jiang Hai had never been afraid of anyone when it came to playing rough. But would they not come? Don't joke. People die for money, and birds die for food. It was that simple. On the 3rd day, after the water cannons were installed and adjusted, Jiang Hai and the others went to bed very early on the 3rd night. Jiang Hai also did not fool around with his girlfriend. Sure enough, at 5:00 the next morning, when the sky was just beginning to darken, Edward Anderson sounded the alarm. Then, Jiang Hai and the fishermen rushed to the dock immediately. Belle also immediately went to the helipad and started the helicopter. The purpose of the helicopter was not to fight, but to film. Jiang Hai could be considered to have taken the initiative this time. If these guys were desperate, then don't blame Jiang Hai for not being polite. After the 2 fishing boats were full of people, they directly drove to the place where the alarm sounded. This time, their speed was very fast. When they arrived at the border, those people had not yet entered Jiang Hai's territory. Jiang Hai fixed his eyes and could not help but curse. Maybe it was because he saw Jiang Hai's fishing boats suffer from the water cannons 3 days ago, so 3 days later, nearly 2/3 of the fishing boats were equipped with water cannons. They were not even hiding them, they were directly placed on the deck. Through the binoculars, Jiang Hai could not help but sneer at those people's proud expressions. It could be seen that they did not come with good intentions, but Jiang Hai and the others did not come with good intentions either. At this time, many people on those boats also saw the cannons on Jiang Hai's boat. For a moment, many people felt a little guilty because they did not know what was in those cannons. Who cares what they are, just go straight to them. If Jiang Hai does not let us go, then drag his boat back to his dock. The boat of the Chamber of Commerce also saw Jiang Hai's cannons. The son of the Chamber of Commerce, who had a bad temper, said loudly to the people on the boat through the radio. Hearing that there was someone backing them, the hearts of these fishermen gradually relaxed. Jiang Hai, have you thought it through? Will you hand over the murderer or not? Seeing that the fishermen's minds gradually made up, the president of the Fishing Association couldn't help but chuckle, then shouted at Jiang Hai through the radio. I'll hand you over, I'm warning you now, you have entered my private waters. Now all of you withdraw immediately, and I will pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, I will start to protect my rights and interests. Hearing the president's words, Jiang Hai directly scolded back, and then said loudly. Hearing that Jiang Hai still dared to be so tough, the president's face was quite ugly. It's really like the old saying of the Wuxia people, you won't cry until you see the coffin, you won't give up until you reach the Yellow River. Well, I'll see how you defend it, water cannon. Putting down the radio, he also knew that it was useless to say more, so he directly fired the cannons. With his order, countless water beams shot towards Jiang Hai's boat in an instant, but because they were still a little far away, these boats couldn't reach Jiang Hai's boat directly, but as the boats on both sides got closer and closer, it was only a matter of time before they reached it. 1682, 2365, and 1750. Looking at the thickness of these water beams, Edward Anderson reported the data to him. These guys still dare to use 82? That's really giving them face. Tell Marin to destroy the biggest boat, and we'll sweep the boats with 82 millimeters. Originally, Jiang Hai was thinking that he shouldn't be too ruthless in dealing with these ordinary boats. However, these people didn't think the same way. Now that these people wanted to kill Jiang Hai, how could Jiang Hai let them do as they pleased? With Jiang Hai's order, Edward Anderson immediately notified Marin Rupert. After Marin Rupert received the signal, he told Bill have Nia and Eleanor Cece on his boat, and the two immediately ran out of the cabin, came to the 120mm cannon, and aimed at the biggest boat on the opposite side. With Jiang Hai's order, the two also opened the valve in an instant. Boom! 2 water dragons rushed towards the big boat over there with an indomitable momentum. The crew on the deck of the boat was stunned at this time. What's going on? F***CK. Looking at the 2 water dragons rushing in front of him, the crew on the big boat over here couldn't help but be stunned. But before he finished speaking, the 2 water dragons had already rushed to his boat in an instant. Although the boat of the president of the Fisheries Association was not small, compared to Jiang Hai's boat, it was only one size smaller. But small was small. With a 120mm cannon rushing over, it would be strange if he wasn't stunned. And most importantly, his boat had no protective equipment. In an instant, the 2 water dragons rushed to the deck. The sailors over there didn't think that Jiang Hai's water dragons would rush up directly. The huge impact of the water jets rushed on these people, and the huge impact instantly washed them away. The impact force could directly break the wooden planks. Although it wasn't fatal in an instant, it was inevitable that they would be sent flying. The first unlucky one was the crew's son. He was directly sent flying backward and hit the wall over there. Fortunately, Marin Rupert didn't know who he was, so he didn't intend to kill him directly. After sending him flying, he began to charge at others. At the same time, he was also charging at the boat. In an instant, the boat was in a mess. The sailors on the deck were rolling and crawling in all directions. As for fighting back, they didn't even think about it. Of course, even if someone wanted to fight back, they would need to be able to touch Jiang Hai. The ship itself was no longer obedient, it was being washed by the current and was somewhat out of control. Seeing Jiang Hai firing and killing their leader in an instant, many fishermen were a little flustered. Especially those guys who just came here to fish. Their boat didn't have any water cannons and had no attack power. Now that they saw Jiang Hai's strength, they were also a little scared. Many boats slowed down their speed, ready to wait and see. But there were always some people who liked to take themselves too seriously. Seeing that the leading boat had lost its fighting power, some boats didn't retreat but rushed towards Jiang Hai, shouting slogans. Jiang Hai also walked out of the deck at this time and went to a 120mm cannon. Looking at these fishing boats rushing over, Jiang Hai couldn't help but grin. After Jiang Hai adjusted his position, he also roared and instantly opened the valve of the high-pressure water cannon. In an instant, a water dragon directly spewed out. The fishing boat that was still shouting slogans didn't have time to react at all. The water dragon had already rushed over. 120 against 82, what else was there to say? The water dragon instantly rushed straight to the deck of the boat. Not only did it instantly send the sailors flying, but it also sent them flying at least 3 meters away. It also sent the 82mm cannon into the sea. Jiang Hai knew that although the real expensive part of this game was the pump motor, the platform above it wasn't cheap either. It would cost at least $10,000. These guys fishing for a month might not even earn $10,000. Jiang Hai now made them feel the pain. Their 82mm cannon was instantly sent flying, their sailors were also instantly sent flying. And most importantly, the huge water dragon was constantly attacking the fishing boat. It must be known that this boat wasn't as big as the chairman's boat. It was just an ordinary small fishing boat near the sea. When the water dragon rushed forward, the boat was no longer moving to the side. Instead, it was moving backward. The water current was pushing it backward. The boat shook especially hard, as if it would flip over at any time. The people on the boat were completely panicked. Screams and curses were constantly heard. Seeing that these guys were almost scared out of their wits, Jiang Hai also turned the water cannon in another direction. After all, he didn't really want to send this boat of people into the sea to feed the sharks, so he was still very careful. Seeing that they were almost scared out of their wits, he directly changed direction. On the other side, the one who was controlling the water cannon was Endurkian Christian. This guy was even more cowardly. He rushed the 82mm cannon into the sea. After scattering the sailors, he changed his target. What should we do? What should we do now? Seeing that Jiang Hai had dealt with 3 ships in an instant, many fishing boats stopped in their tracks. They were a little scared. Although it was said that barefooted people were not afraid of wearing shoes, but for a pair of shoes, it was impossible for them to pay with their lives. Therefore, they were very conflicted and also very scared. I'll kill them all. These fishing boats didn't dare to move. On the other side, the chairman's fishing boat was also in a mess. The chairman's son looked like he was fished out of the water. After he climbed into the cabin, he took a long time to recover. The 120mm water cannon directly hit him. To be honest, the impact was really too big. At this time, there was an obvious bruise on his chest. It was estimated that he would be in pain for a while after he went back. When did he suffer such grievances? He immediately shouted loudly and directly picked up his shotgun. He was about to go out and fight with Jiang Hai, but before he could go out, he was stopped by his father. What I said to you, didn't you think about it? Did you forget that these people also have guns in their hands? Looking at his son in front of him, the chairman narrowed his eyes and said sternly to him. Hearing his father's words, the son was also a little confused. Then, what should we do now? Looking at his father, to be honest, he was quite unwilling. We have a lot of boats, I don't believe that he dares to directly overturn these boats. Tell the other boats to surround their boats. After thinking for a while, the chairman said loudly. Hearing the chairman's words, the captain immediately used the radio to tell the other fishing boats the news. After hearing this news, most of the people on the other fishing boats were very obedient and didn't move. After all, they were all old sailors. They knew that if the boat overturned, the people on the boat would die. Regardless of whether Jiang Hai will compensate them after they die, at least they will be the ones to die. The Americans especially value their lives. When the United States was at war, surrendering was actually not a difficult thing for them to accept. They were afraid of death on the surface, but now, their lives depended on whether Jiang Hai, a rich man, would have a conscience or not. They were very afraid, so most of the fishing boats were still in a wait-and-see attitude. However, not all fishing boats were in a wait-and-see attitude, at least some fishing boats were ready to come over. Wealth comes from danger, this was their way. Looking at the boats coming over, Jiang Hai and the others in the boat looked at each other, then they couldn't help but chuckle. Did these guys really think that they only had 2 water cannons? Shoot their water cannons into the sea, then let them come over. Mainly attack the big boat. Seeing the situation in front of them, Edward Anderson immediately ordered. After hearing his words, Jiang Hai and the others opened the water valve again and swept the water cannons towards the fishing boats. Unfortunately, their attacks were blocked by the steel plates. The threat to Jiang Hai and the others was almost zero. Only the splashed water fell from the holes and the roof, soaking them in water. But compared to Jiang Hai's water cannons, this water was far worse. One by one, the water cannons on the fishing boats were swept into the water by Jiang Hai and the others. One by one, the sailors fell into the sea or hid in the cabin. But these fishing boats were really tenacious. In such a situation, they still came over. They were prepared to use their advantage in numbers to squeeze Jiang Hai's fishing boats here, making them unable to move, forcing Jiang Hai and the others to negotiate or let them pass. But they were dreaming. But will things really go as they imagined? When these fishing boats rushed through the firepower blockade of Jiang Hai's 2 fishing boats, these people couldn't help but cheer. They knew that although Jiang Hai's fishing boats were protected, after all, the protection made the water cannons unable to move freely. There was a dead end. If there were a lot of boats, then it would be different, but in a situation where there weren't a lot of boats, this was very fatal. Although some fishing boats lost their water cannons, they still rushed to the side of Jiang Hai's boat. The president couldn't help but laugh. Let's see how you can stop us this time. Looking at Jiang Hai's 2 fishing boats in the distance, the president's eyes couldn't help but narrow. This time, he believed that Jiang Hai shouldn't be able to stop them. But will things really be as simple as he thought? Just as those fishing boats were about to reach Jiang Hai's fishing boat, Jiang Hai's mouth couldn't help but slightly open. These guys who don't have any water cannons want to deal with him? It can only be said that these guys are really too naive. With Jiang Hai's order, the 2 82mm water cannons on both sides also revealed their ferocious appearance. When these 2 water cannons were pushed out, the fishing boats were stunned. They completely didn't understand where these 2 water cannons came from, but it didn't prevent them from knowing that this time, they were in trouble. Fire. With Jiang Hai's order, the 2 water cannons on the side were also activated in an instant. The water dragon spewed out from the valve instantly hit the fishing boats. After all, the 82mm water cannons were not as scary as the 120mm water cannons. However, these fishing boats also had no way to resist the 82mm water cannon. Although it was not like the 120mm water cannon, which felt like it was going to capsize as soon as it rushed up, it was still directly pushed away, unlike the 120mm water cannon that dealt with the large fishing boat. What? There are water cannons. Looking at Jiang Hai's water cannons, the president couldn't help but be surprised. Originally, he thought that Jiang Hai's 2 120mm water cannons were already good enough, but he didn't expect that there were more, and they were comparable to his main cannon. Looking at these water cannons constantly pushing away the fishing boats, a trace of shock flashed in his heart. Then he had to smile bitterly. Although he didn't want to admit it, they were bound to lose to Jiang Hai in terms of money. I don't believe it, let's get on the boat and launch a sneak attack. Looking at his father, who seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant, the president's son didn't think so. After secretly cursing, he was ready to use his own method to deal with Jiang Hai. Although they can't use guns, as long as they climb onto Jiang Hai's boat, then Jiang Hai's water cannons will be useless. Thinking of this, he also said to a few sailors who were on good terms with him. After listening to his words, these sailors immediately went to prepare the speedboats. Not long after, 2 speedboats came out from the back of the big boat, and then rushed toward Jiang Hai's boat. Looking at these 2 boats, Jiang Hai couldn't help but chuckle. Indeed, the speed of the speedboats is very fast and flexible. Not to mention 120mm water cannons, even 82mm water cannons will have a hard time hitting him. But Jiang Hai was already prepared for this. When the 2 speedboats came from the left and right of Jiang Hai's fishing boat, he was not in a hurry. Not only him, but Edward Anderson, Marin Rupert, and all the sailors were not in a hurry. It's up to you. Looking at Bauer Rahman behind him, who was ready to continue, Marin Rupert said with a smile. Just watch the show. Hearing Marin Rupert's words, Bauer Rahman also smiled evilly. At this time, the 2 speedboats were about to reach Jiang Hai's ship. They were only about 10 meters away. It would only take them a few seconds to reach Jiang Hai's ship. At this time, the president's son also stood up from his seat. Victory is in front of us, let's go. Pointing at Jiang Hai's 2 fishing boats in the distance, he also shouted loudly. Just as his voice fell, Carlyle Cotton and Bauer Rahman, who were already prepared, also came out of their respective fishing boats, holding a small water valve in their hands. Looking at the water valve, the people on the 2 speedboats were stunned for a moment. Then, the people on both sides wanted to turn at the first moment, but unfortunately, their speed was not as fast as the speed of the water. As the 2 opened the water valve, 2 water dragons came out in an instant, giving the other party no chance at all. Before the president's son could react, he was hit in the chest again. He was thrown out of the speedboat and fell into the ocean. His chest was hit twice. He felt as if his chest was about to be torn apart. If it weren't for his strong will and his excellent swimming skills, he might have died in an instant. Enduring the dizziness, he floated to the surface of the water. What he saw was the people on the 2 boats being washed into the sea one by one, including the boat. It was swept far away in an instant. Then, it was hit by the 82mm projectile and crashed into a fishing boat. The fishing boat was hit by the 82mm projectile, and the speedboat, should be prepared for major repairs. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.